And we will accept public comment via email. Email that to mdrury, DREWRY, @co.mason.wa.us. Or you can mail them to the Commission Office at 411 North 5th Street, Shelton, Washington, 98584, or you can call 360-427-9670, extension 419. We intend to limit our meetings to discuss and or take action on only essential county business during this time. So we'll go around the room for introductions.
Peter Gallen.
Dave Windom.
Frank Pinter.
Randy Miller, that was quick.
Kevin Shooty.
And Sharon Trask.
Thank you, Commissioners. First item was a letter that I sent out, or that was sent out by the Attorney General in regards to guidance around the expenditures regarding or related to COVID-19 and the issue of whether they are a gifting of public funds during a pandemic. This is very similar to the other letter that he issued previously. However, the circumstances that he's addressing here are slightly different in that what he's identifying is making payments to nonprofits to support child care services, to providing employees with paid leave when they are ordered not to come to work, or to give, just as a few examples. So the previous one was around, related to schools. This one is for local governments and state agencies, and their opinion that paying for child care services or for individuals who are sent home to deal with child care and or for services related to sending individuals home are not a gifting of public funds as it relates to the pandemic. So that's just a follow-up. We have in front of you policies and procedures as it relates to the pandemic and health, public health emergency response by Mason County, as it, again, as it relates to county employees. There are a couple of items where I'm looking for some guidance as to what the board would like to do, and I'll go through those items if I may. So we identified the purpose. We have the scope, which is to all county departments and electeds and generally around their employees. The definitions we have that are open or unresolved: closure pay, payment of regular wages and benefits during closure of the county or other county facilities in the event of a pandemic. This is equivalent to paid administrative leave, where you get regular pay without impact to accrued leave banks. This was what was addressed previously in the Attorney General's letter, saying that that would not be a gifting of public funds, that as it relates to the business of the county, which is the protecting public health, is without question a fundamental purpose of government. We think it is extremely unlikely that a court would conclude that providing paid administrative leave in these circumstances is an unconstitutional gifting of public funds. The other is extra duty pay. This is a payment of regular wages and benefits during the closure of the county or other county facilities in the event of a pandemic. If the county deems that all the county employees that are to come to work are, quote, essential employees, and if they do come to work or work during that period, does the county want to extend an extra duty pay, which in most cases previously, well, we haven't had this circumstance, but where we have asked county employees to come in, where other employees are not required to come in, we have had a 5% increase in their salaries or in their extra duty pay. Other cities have used that as well. Thurston County has included it in their policies and procedures. Tukwila has included it. Kirkland has included it. And that's an option as to whether or not the commission wants to include that in this policy and procedure.
Does that apply to represented and non-represented employees alike?
Represented and non-represented.
Union and non-union?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it would. And you can make this distinction one way or another. You, meaning the board. Pandemic pay, that is defined, and that was somewhat defined by the First Families Corona Response Act. There are 5 specific items that the federal government has passed in the FFRCA Act that would allow for the government to repay employers, including the county, for these 5 circumstances where you send individuals home. And those are identified on page,
I don't think we have those in our packet.
3.
Yeah.
It just looks differently.
I think I do.
Did you?
Quarantine or isolated.
Yeah,
provided
quarantine or
healthcare
isolated,
provider,
correct.
experiencing pandemic symptoms, etc.
So there are 2 categories. If an individual is quarantined or isolated, that's what is then the employee is to stay home or ends up in the hospital. If the employee is advised by a health provider to self-quarantine due to an illness, that's a similar circumstance where the employee has become ill. Where the employee is experiencing pandemic symptoms and seeks medical attention, that is the third of those 3 where the employee is suspected of or is ill with COVID-19. Those, when that occurs, the federal government will repay the county 75% of that employee's salary. The state is still up in the air, is still a question of whether or not the state will contribute to that. If it does, it's looking at contributing up between 11 and 15% of the recovery of that individual's pay. The last 2 items is where an individual is caring for an immediate family member. That's where the individual is not sick, but somebody within that immediate family is, a child, mother, father, or something of that nature. And the term immediate family member is very specific. It's defined under FMLA regulations. The last is if a child of the employee or a dependent of the employee who is either in school or has alternate care during work hours. If that school or that alternate care is closed, then the employee has to stay home to take care of the child or the dependent, then that person would also receive, in those 2 cases, the federal government would reimburse the county 50% of their pay, and the state would reduce their component of it as well.
Is that tied to federal legislation that has already been passed and signed
Yes,
into law, or is it
that's
current?
That has already been passed, signed into law, Family First COVID Recovery Act. So that is in effect.
So then how do we track and then seek that reimbursement?
So in both of these cases, or in all of these cases, we would need to set up a special pay code and a project code under our payroll system to accommodate that. And that would not be a difficult issue.
So would this also be, so I know we're tracking it for our response teams also. So that would be a different.
So
have to be
these
different.
are recoveries that we can collect under the Family First Act. So they would need to be tracked separately. The other COVID costs that we are tracking are actual costs, such as the extra cleaning crew, expenditures the health department is making to get the word out to the public. Those are costs, and those are reimbursable as well. That's why we're tracking those. There are salaries that can be tracked for time spent on COVID-related issues, and that would be reimbursable under, is it under FEMA that we get those, it's
Yes.
under FEMA,
That's
where we
right.
get those reimbursements.
It's a pretty cool page. Tried it, she tested it, and it is working, so it's separating the employee's time from,
So
Normal
there
time
are
for COVID.
3 time categories that we would have to track. One, time spent on COVID-related issues, and 2 others that would be recoverable under the Family First COVID Recovery Act. The Family First Act, we would recover those through credits on our FICA taxes. And that hasn't been clearly spelled out exactly how that would work, other than the act said that we would, as an employer, receive those credits back through elimination of FICA taxes going forward. So the question in front of the board is, do we have closure pay, extra duty pay, and then we'll go on to the next grouping, which is under G, in case there's a partial county closure.
Okay, I'll go. So, given the information from the Attorney General's office and given the decisions that are being made at the federal level, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
I am too. My concern was, what legal obligations do we have, and I think that the Attorney General has answered a lot of our questions. If we can help out our employees, in this time, I'm all for it.
Okay.
It's a hard one for me, if you can tell. I have no problem doing what is already out there and what they're allowed to be compensated for. I have a hard time going anything other than, if we are ordered to close down, closure pay. So that, but as I was saying, I worry, I want to make sure that we are not much different than what's happening in the real world out there. People want to go home, and I get that. But, if they're gonna go home and work from home, we need to make sure they're working from home, if they're gonna get paid. If they choose to go home, and just because they want to right now, I don't think there should be a pay. I think it should come out of their time.
Actually, that's coming, that's the
Yeah,
next,
I
that's
know,
the next.
but it's all connected, that's
Yeah,
what
it is, it's
that's
all-
what I'm having the troubles with. I have no problem with the things that are already set up by law, because the governor and the president are both putting out things right now, and they're saying things all the time, such as, it's our responsibility to cover these things and to allow them those positions, especially if they are sick or if they have a child. So, I don't know, again, I have no problem with what's required right now, but anything separate.
Right, I don't think that this is going to affect unless we were ordered to shelter in place or close.
And actually, that's a question, and I'm glad both of you are here, is what does a shelter-in-place order mean? And when does the EOC come into the picture and manage county government?
we don't manage county government. That would not happen that way. What the shelter in place thing is kind of, it's kind of interesting because that's where we have to say what is a required or what is a mandatory to be here persons, you know, and departments and stuff like that, like sanitation, water, stuff like that would be mandatory for life. But I'm still in that clue of, or I'm unsure till we get this come from them of what they'll say about government. So what does that say? Does it mean the treasurer's office can close? Does it mean the assessor's office can close? All those can close. Or does it mean you go down to skeleton crew, but if they say shelter in place, it means you're not supposed to leave your house or leave close proximity of your house, except to go certain things that are life supporting, which is pharmacies, get groceries, stuff like that. Not going shopping, because they'll close all the other kind of shopping things down that don't have groceries in that. But the government would not, it would not fold underneath the emergency operations center. We are just working on the response to basically the public health side of that. So,
Okay.
yeah, you wouldn't be making any decisions right now.
A shelter-in-place order in California specifically identified county governments and the essential functions of county governments as an essential requirement, so that they would be expected to continue to go to work. Most of them are offering telework and telecommuting types of options, where they don't necessarily have to go to work, but work from home. But they are required as an essential function within society to operate, similar to what pharmacies and grocery stores are deemed to do, gas stations are deemed to do. So in a shelter-in-place order, the theory is that only essential employees would be required to work. Other employees would not necessarily be required to work. So that's the other question I have for the board is, if that's put in place, and we have essential employees, we've identified those.
And we identified all of them in the road department and utilities and.
We haven't, and that's where we need to have the board ask for that from each of the departments, is what is an essential employee?
And I think you sent something out last week, didn't you?
Correct, yes, we
Asking
did.
the departments to take a look
Mhm.
and decide who is essential.
And who is essential, and then get back to to myself and or to the board to discuss what is essential, and as a matter of fact, our next briefing item is what is it essential for the support services department.
So again, if it is deemed shelter in place and we move to that and that type of closure, then I'm comfortable with those things, but only under those circumstances. There's a lot of stuff in here that's you know, interpretive without that. You know, you have your family member, you don't know that they even have COVID, they don't feel good today, so I'm gonna stay home because I can't, you know, and I'm not gonna go to work for 3 days, because he's still not feeling well, you know, it's interpretive and not specific. I just need it to be specific.
You don't want it to be abused.
Yeah, for me to be comfortable, I need it to be specific.
Well, do you want to put in items such as requires a doctor's note or requires something to that effect?
I think that's better than not. And again, I think it's, if we were ordered to shelter in place.
Right, so if we were ordered to shelter in place, then you would be comfortable
With all of it.
following this?
Yep.
So if we
It'd be
go
nice
down
to have
that list.
It'd be nice to have the doctor's note
Yeah.
with it.
So I can add that in either
Right.
in all of them.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Okay.
One of the things that the presidential disaster declaration did give us that I think, I don't know if you've already mentioned this or not, with whatever you do, as long as it is marked that it is for COVID, even if you're, you know, sending people home because it was mandated that they leave to go home, that can be put toward that reimbursement for 75% FEMA, 12.5% state, and then 12.5% local. hopefully the state will be still kicking in their 12.5%. So at minimum, we're looking at about 75% we'll be able to get back on that if they are sent home because of this mandate from the governor. I'm really hoping the governor gives a little more explanation than what he has in the past, because he's used some phrases and terms that people have misinterpreted. So I'm hoping that we really get a good outlay from him of what he means when he does say this shelter in place. You know, because if he gives the executive order for that, which is basically becomes a law, executive order, they would have penalties behind that, which would be civil penalties of, you know, like $1,000 if you get caught doing it, so, or breaking that order.
So, in the event that the county is partially closed, staff not designated essential and are not required to work and are represented, predominantly FLSA non-exempt, shall, and then we have three options. Not receive pay, but can use accrued vacation comp time, or be eligible to receive unemployment insurance if laid off, or receive closure pay. Now, if you remember, that's closure pay, which is paid administrative leave. That would be at the cost of the county, and that would not be recoverable by the Family First Act, because you're not sick and you're not required to take care of somebody that is sick. We're closing.
Yeah, but it's covered under the other, the declaration, yeah, for President FEMA.
It'd be under the FEMA then.
So when I read,
If it's sheltered,
if it's a shelter in place, that's a state order. The Family First is a federal law that's already been put in place. There are only 5 items that the Fed will pay for. Those are the 3 I'm sick or I have symptoms, and the 2 I have to take care of somebody that's sick or has symptoms, or a child. So that's the Family First Recovery Act. That's where the feds will pay for part of it. If we send people home who are not sick, then we either don't pay them, they can use their accrued leave or comp time, or collect unemployment, or we can pay them closure pay. Under the state attorney general's ruling, that would not be a gifting of public funds. We would not recover those dollars. We obviously have it in the budget, so we don't have to do budget supplements, but those would not be recoverable.
Can I get a hold of FEMA? Let me get a hold of FEMA today and ask them that specific and see, and I can get back to you.
but at the same time, I don't know, we may be able to move forward with that anyway.
Yeah.
If it's based on closure, you know, again, I keep coming back to, I'm sorry, I just wanna make, that I am okay with option 3.
Receive closure pay.
If it's based on, you know.
The county has decided only essential employees come to work, and non-essential employees can stay home and adhere to the shelter-in-place executive order by the state.
One of the other things I think we need to add in here, that this is only valid for the duration of the emergency declaration.
Yeah, please, actually,
Yeah.
for this emergency declaration.
The presidential one, or the one that we're gonna bring forth? Because we're gonna bring a disaster
I
declaration.
think it should be based on ours.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Ours.
Yeah.
I don't know, does it, unless that creates something
No.
wonky with getting reimbursement?
No, not at all. No, not at all. Because they actually jumped ahead of the governor asking me, is what he did. It's sort of like what happened with some of the fires. The president jumped ahead and said, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and do this before the governor received information from everybody else, asking for him to ask the president for a disaster declaration. he called it up first, so.
The second grouping are those employees who are then asked to come in, are deemed essential. Do they receive a normal rate of pay, or do they receive extra duty pay?
And I'm the chiefscape, but at that time, they'll be doing extra duties extraordinaire. Because there'll be nobody else to do it, they'll have to do, you know,
Yep.
their own file, they'll have to do everything, because there won't be anybody to do it. I have no problem with, what was it, 5%?
Yeah,
5%.
yeah, it's good.
Here, an interesting caveat. FLSA exempt employees, these are employees that are at-will exempt, not union represented. If they do any work at all, 5 minutes in a week, we are required to pay them.
Yes, that I know. Been there, done that.
We are required to pay them.
Yeah.
If they're essential, obviously we've covered.
The only ones I want to have that extra is the ones that are here.
So then you want to specifically tell those non-essential FLSA exempt employees to not work, in which case we would not be required to pay them. But you would have to tell them that they can't do 5 minutes worth of work and still get a paycheck.
I see what you're saying because of that, because that's the agreement that we have,
That's an
we've never-
FLSA
We've
exempt.
never set a policy. It was talked several years ago, and I remember wanting to, you weren't here yet, and we just never did, but we should have.
So
We
now
need to look
we're,
at that
now we're,
next-
yeah, now we're at that juncture where we have to make a decision. If you're non-essential, but an exempt employee, are you going to ask them to not work, period? In which case they would not receive a paycheck.
Well, this only counts anyway when they are, when we're closed down. So if, everybody's gonna get that pay anyway, right? Mine is.
So,
Or
yeah,
mine-
then they would get closure pay,
Right.
and they would receive paid
Yeah,
administratively,
but no 5%.
Not the-
but no
yeah,
5%.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
yep.
that's only, and I wanna make it, in my opinion, telecommunicating, none of that. 5% is for those that have to show up,
If they come in.
yeah,
Physically.
physically here.
Yeah.
If I can, I don't wanna say danger pay,
Let's not use that word.
but pays to pay more when I
Extra
have to do
duty.
certain kinds of
Extra
training.
duty.
Yeah.
Extra duty. Okay, then I have what I need as answers, which are to say that we are going to consider closure pay, we are going to consider extra duty pay. And if there is a partial closure of the county, non-essential employees will receive extra duty pay that are asked to come in. All other employees will receive closure pay for that period of time. If, however, you are in either grouping an employee who has been quarantined, isolated, or has to, advised by the health officer or healthcare provider to self-quarantine or isolate, or you have symptoms, we can receive federal reimbursements for those. We should keep track of those. And then secondarily, if we have an individual who is taking care of either an immediate family member who has COVID or is suspected of having COVID or requires child care or dependent care and doesn't have that, those items would be recoverable regardless of
Yeah,
which
but-
side of the essential, non-essential fence you're on.
Again, I understand if they have COVID, if they're dealing with that, if there's a doctor's thing, but the idea that they may not have the childcare, I don't know that I agree with that they could just not go to work. 'Cause they
That's
decide
under the
to-
federal act, so that's already been determined,
But we
But they-
don't, we can't,
But we have to pay them first?
yes.
and then we're reimbursed.
And then we would be reimbursed, yes.
And that's effective April 2nd.
Yeah,
That was, yes,
15
April
days after
2nd,
the law.
15 days after the law was
Yeah.
passed.
Well, if that's what it is, it's what it is.
Yeah, those were the two categories. If you're infected, well, there were three categories there. And then the second is either you're taking care of somebody that's infected,
I got no problem
but you
with that.
yourself are not.
I got no problem
Or
with
you're
that.
taking care of a child or dependent that doesn't have alternate, how do they put it?
Childcare.
Childcare or dependent care. then you, the federal government will reimburse the county for those
Is
expenses.
it 100% reimbursed?
75.
75, so that includes benefits and everything?
Um,
Probably not.
I don't have an answer to
Yeah, I
that.
don't know that either, that's where I was.
Yeah,
I don't
like
have
I
an
said,
answer
that
to
part
that.
bothers me, because that's gonna be ripe for somebody, people taking advantage of it. If it's the law, it's the law, but,
Yeah, those were the 5
make
categories
sure,
that were included.
please, it's the law though, that we have to do that, because that doesn't make sense.
Yes, I will, and
One other thing I'd like to add us to consider maybe doing, if they are that afraid, if they are worried, with the permission of their director or elected, that they can take the time off, and receive no pay if they want, so they don't lose all their,
Without pay.
yeah. So they can choose not to. They do that in the medical industry and stuff, I know that, and some people can take advantage of that, they can afford it, they just take a couple of weeks off. But only with the permission of a director or the elected. When I say director, I mean like, our term director, not somebody just running the department.
this emergency, again, under IRS regulations, allows for accrued sick leave, donated sick leave. The IRS regulation says that if you're going to donate sick leave to a pool, then you have to pay taxes on that. And then when the pool takes it, then they can distribute those sick leave hours to a recipient. Under an emergency, either a medical or a physical, like a hurricane or a tornado, the IRS will waive that tax requirement and allow people to donate into a pool tax exempt, as well as then receive it tax exempt. So we can set up a policy, because in our personnel policy, our accrued leave pool has been canceled because of the tax consequence. But we can set up an emergency pooled, paid sick leave pooling under these circumstances that would allow for people to donate into the pool and then receive sick leave should they need it.
Well, that may help for a longer term,
Again, it's only for the duration of the
yeah.
medical
But what I
emergency.
meant, in order for somebody to keep getting some pay and not all of it, that may be beneficial. But what I'm talking about is allowing them to choose to be off with their directors or electeds' approval without having to take from their.
So do I hear no pooled sick leave? Or should we
It doesn't bother,
proceed
I don't see.
with a pooled sick leave policy should we need it?
How is it determined who gets the sick leave?
Again, that'll come in front of the board, and you'll make that
Oh, wait a
determination.
minute. Always in the past, they made those decisions. I don't wanna. If somebody's
There
got-
are a number of options that you can set up, first come, first serve, highest need. But that would be a policy that the board would put forward as to how you would allocate those. There's 2 things that would need to be decisions by the board. One is, do you want to do hours? And, or do you want to, who would be eligible, under what criteria? So if you wanted to do hours, that would mean that somebody at a higher pay would put in 10 hours, and then 10 hours would be taken out. But at that higher pay, if you were to put in dollars, then somebody at a different or a lower pay might end up getting twice as many hours out of that.
Now, are they okay with that?
Yes,
Because
that's part- that's-
before, that was brought to us before, and it was the departments or the people that were taking track of that didn't want no part of doing that.
That's allowable under the
No, it's allowable,
emergency.
but our staff, our people that are gonna do it, are they okay with? There was some issues with that when that was brought forward, because that made sense before too. I remember us talking about it, but it
And
ended up
again,
being
I could
hour
bring
for
that
hour.
forward next week, when we bring forward a policy about whether or not we physically can handle that as an option, to do it in dollars rather than in hours.
Makes logical sense, but.
Okay.
I have no problem with looking
Yeah.
at, you know, a policy of it, separate of the other one. You guys have any problem with that other?
No, I mean, I don't know how many people would take advantage of that, but.
Well,
Another
based
tool.
on that
It's an
email
option.
and stuff I
Yeah.
had, and
I mean, if we're gonna have closure pay, then I don't know how many people might take advantage of it, but in case they wanna take advantage of it, they can.
well, and this could last a long time.
So it kind of begs the question, so what is our emergency declaration?
It's good for
Currently-
30 days, so it was good till the, it's good till the 5th. But then I'm gonna do one hopefully for tomorrow,
the pro-
will be a disaster one.
The proclamation we did on the, but we did the,
We haven't done it, we haven't.
Yeah,
We
we
did the
did
emergency-
declaration, we
we
came
did
in.
declaration on
specific-
Friday.
Yeah,
Yeah, the emergency
Special
declaration,
meeting.
I think was at the, it's good for 30 days.
Yeah.
But
It's good for
whatever,
30
I can't
days,
remember what the
and
first
we
name
did it.
was. but-
Just did that last week.
Yeah, was that on the,
Friday.
Like
on
the
the
12th?
Friday? That's right, 12th, so it's good
13th,
to
Friday the
12th.
13th.
Yes,
It was Friday the
Friday
13th,
the
yeah.
13th, yes, I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah, good move on that.
So it would be 30 days.
So we're good for 30 days, but I'll be bringing one hopefully tomorrow. And there's really not a rush on that one, that we might end
Oh,
up
we just hold off on it then.
doing it, yeah, doing it closer to that expiration of that other one, yeah.
Do we wanna put this on the agenda for tomorrow?
Can you make the changes?
Yep.
I'm good
Or
with
do
it.
we want to come back and do a quick special next Tuesday?
We can. I can make the changes,
Can we-
have a draft out to you before the end of the
we'd
day.
have to come back if,
Can we make it determined on what the governor, whether the governor says, you know, shelter in place?
well, that's what I was hoping that's,
Yeah.
but the question is if he does that tomorrow
Or today?
Or today.
or
Or
today.
today.
Because normally,
I'm doing it tomorrow.
normally I'd have no problem putting it off.
Okay, I can get a draft
If he
out
does- and
back
I-
to the board
When it comes to him, I don't know. what he's
before the
gonna
end
do.
of the day and still make modifications based on.
I think I prefer to do
Your
it tomorrow, just to cover our base.
Comfortable.
Then our next item is a approval for the designation of essential personnel in support services. Now, in this categorization, and unfortunately, I didn't foresee the need to categorize these. We've got two layers. We have one person who's an essential employee, and then another backup person, should that person become ill. So there's two tiers in here. Each of these employees are essential. Not all of them are essential at the same time. And I guess the question is, how do we address that?
If it comes off that it's declared, then the other one's getting paid anyway, so the only difference is when you're here, you're at 5%.
Correct,
I don't see an issue with
I
that.
think it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
okay.
And I think we need to consider too, we only have a few VPNs for the
Right.
county, so we need to make sure
Yeah,
that.
there are only 50 VPNs, and the IT department doesn't know what happens if 50 people log in at the same time, what happens to our bandwidth. But we can designate where, I mean, there are 3 8-hour shifts in a day, so we can kind of alternate when people are on or not on. So assuming that we have the full bandwidth and capability is there, in theory, using 3 shifts, we can accommodate 150 people maximum using the system. If there's a bandwidth issue, then it would be something less than that, and we'd have to work through the prioritization of how that works. So I will move forward declaring that as well. Anything else?
Frank, I have public defenses, Peter identified,
Oh,
Yes.
theirs?
yes, and it's basically his attorneys. Peter, and then he's 1, 2, 3, 4 attorneys.
And put it out, I guess, with your guys' permission, put it out immediately, we want those names.
We did, and
No,
we asked, yeah, and I'll
Now.
reiterate that
Because
as
if we're gonna
well.
put it in face, we need to know what we're,
And that's all I have.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your hard work. You're doing an amazing job.
There's actually room to go around me this time.
Hey, Dave,
Okay,
did you bring extra copies of the can?
yes, I did. And it's extra large rock star.
Yeah.
So,
I thought you were cutting that.
Yeah.
picked a bad week to put doing rock star.
He'll cut that quick.
Well, no, the times he's been here, he goes through these cycles.
Oh, I know. There's there.
I have
You have one, that one's for,
one.
Diane. Okay. So much stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna run us through the can really quick. That's what we've been briefing with over there, then I have 2 pages of other things. So, as of this morning, we have a second confirmed case. We've got the health officer's notice of that going out this morning. In fact, it may be out by now. It was a female in her 70s, and that's all that the health officer has asked me to release at this point. We have had, just got this off of Epi just minutes ago, 96 tests returned negative and 2 returned positive for Mason County to date.
So we've done 98 tests.
98 total tests. And there's still some out there in the works that we're getting them in.
Wait, Frank?
If I may ask, Dave, does that number of tests include public health officials or nurses and doctors?
That's everybody.
Okay,
So
so,
we haven't broken them out in that way.
Does it also include what happens in North Mason and,
All Mason
All
County.
okay, and now when they go into Kitsap County to take the test, does that count?
That will still come back to us, yeah.
That still comes back to us, okay.
Yeah, the results come back to the county of residence.
Okay.
So, yeah. Okay, let's see. That's my old count report. Let me go to my new count report. Okay. Actually, I think I gave you all my, no, there it is. Okay. Okay, so, Washington State, 1651, 89 deaths as of this morning.
I think it's 1896.
What's that?
1896, I think.
And that's
No,
this
it's
morning, it's 90,
Yeah, that's what I got
95,
off of,
yeah.
that is what I get off of DOH, and that's what I use. It's just straight off what I get off my DOH epi.
I think,
That's what they put out. It's
Yeah.
a day after.
yeah, it's
Right,
a day after,
yeah.
because
And
it's
this
online
morning
though.
was,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
1896,
I think it's
1996.
is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
1996 with 95.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
what I got this morning, well, actually, the DOH site was down this morning when I turned it
Yeah.
on.
What a day to crash.
Yeah, so the site crashed and then the epi also went down, but they emailed me their latest epi, which again is from yesterday.
Yesterday, everything crashed, it was weird.
Yeah. I haven't been able to send any emails out from home unless I use my cell phone. So it's just been kind of crazy. State appointed a single person, which is a good idea, as a director for the response. And she started this morning. So, of course, President Trump declared yesterday, PPE, we have estimated delivery of our first batch of PPE for today or early tomorrow, right? And that's everything that was asked in the first place, plus tests, and I have 2,500 tests.
DOH is still not popping up.
What's that?
I think I'm having issues with Wi-Fi here though.
Oh, is it our Wi-Fi?
Yeah, are you?
Everybody's Wi-Fi's having issues because all the kids out, everybody's out,
Yeah.
Wi-Fi issues.
Gaming.
Yeah,
Even though
exactly.
they boosted up the Wi-Fi, they're still getting slammed on it.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, let me connect to our,
Yeah, I just went to
Yeah,
the
so
phone,
no
I just
internet.
turned off our Wi, it is our Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So we do have PPE coming in. It's going to be delivered to Public Works because that's where we can get truckloads in, and then it will be dispersed from there. So we have the ability to offload with forklifts and things. Last 48 hours, we had a homeless person on Friday night, 6:30 in the evening, went to the shelter and was turned away because they were ill. They had a cough and a
That's
fever.
the one you were talking about, huh?
And this pointed out a problem, something I had not foreseen. What happens if someone goes to the shelter and they are ill for a reason that's not COVID, and the shelter turns them away? Now where do I put them? So we had Mason Central Fire evaluate. They took them to the hospital, and the hospital admitted them. So and kept them over the weekend because they had some other underlying problems as well. So they've kept them over the weekend. Now, we'll be working on how to house this person going forward. So, again, it's a problem. We've thought about COVID patients, isolation, quarantine, but what about those that are sick that aren't allowed in places? They get kind of voted off the island. And we had that last week. We had a person in a nursing home that was turned away because they had been on vacation somewhere. So we're working those issues. The intent is to try to get something into Building 10 as soon as we can. And
So how would that be staffed?
we're working that piece.
Okay.
You're putting a request out to nurses.
Right. And so a lot of it, if it's just, yes. So nurses, we're going to the Medical Reserve Corps. The governor has waived the criteria for people out of state who are licensed to come in. So typically they have to be licensed in Washington as well. They're not required to be licensed in Washington. So we can recruit from out of the area. And Seattle is working that piece pretty hard. So they're getting lots of folks in.
Real quick, so Dave, my wife emailed Lydia
Mhm.
asking if there was any volunteer opportunities, so if you could.
There will be.
on that,
Yes.
So,
Mhm.
put a nurse to work.
Yeah, I say she's a pro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yes, there will be. So, I mean, we'll have need for staffing for medical care, administration, and then we may have to have security as well. So, there'll be three elements there.
You will.
Yeah.
Well, if you have somebody that comes in.
Volunteering?
No, question I have, do you want me to contact the security company that we're using?
Yes, if
For
we
the
get their
courthouse
contact
to
stuff.
see if they
Yeah.
have staffing available
Yeah,
for security down there?
right.
It makes sense, we're already under contract, we could just do a quick.
Is that 24/7?
It would be, if we open up that, it would be 24/7, yeah. Because we're not gonna turn them out during the day.
Two?
Probably one,
Okay.
yeah.
But
For
on
now,
shifts.
yeah.
Working shifts.
Armed or
Yeah.
unarmed?
I don't think they need to be armed,
Okay, just asking.
yeah.
I was holding my breath waiting for the
Yeah,
answer.
At least one,
At
at least one.
If
Yeah.
if we have
He has to sign
patients
the document.
that have
Oh,
mental
you
health,
being a queen in one arm. Go ahead.
so if we have patients with mental health issues, we're looking at possibly using the ENT upstairs, has rooms that have not opened yet. So we're trying to make some arrangements there. We're still working that way,
And also working through the city then.
and working through the city, yeah. So yeah, the city has a piece in this.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to push that a little bit more. We did have a phone conference yesterday with Department of Health discussing local actions and reactions to a possible shelter in place. And it was a very, how do you put it, a robust conversation. So some jurisdictions were pushing pretty hard for shelter in place. Others, including surprisingly Pierce County, were saying that we only get incremental benefit from that, and what we need is PPE and testing. So somewhere probably in the middle, there's a way forward, and I think that John Weisman was going to take that info and talk to the governor yesterday, along with three leadership from Pierce, Snohomish, and King, and try to come up with what the next steps were. Our other piece of that was, please do not forget that rural counties, just because we don't have a lot of cases, and it's not that we don't need PPE and test kits, so please make sure that we are taken care of as well, because it's here, or Garfield, or Okanagan, or wherever. There's still a whole other part of the state that's not those three counties.
Well, as we're starting to loosen up some of that stuff, are they gonna be loosening up at Mason General? Are we gonna get enough, are they?
They'll-
That's when we
they'll be-
started with that 25.
We have other people that are going to Lacey right now.
Well, they'll set it up, they'll still have to meet the criteria for testing. So if they show up and they're not sick, and they have no symptoms, they're gonna get, say, well, come back. We've been doing phone ICF meetings. We've done those twice now, and they're doing them, that's how we're going to do those from now on. And that's working well. So I was on, but my internet would allow me to see, but I couldn't respond. So I'm using the chat function, trying to be in conversation. It was interesting.
Same issue.
Mhm. So we have a nurse on staff who's going to be working solely with planning for an alternate care facility at the middle school. You know, what it's going to take to get, if we have to set up, what does that look like? The hospital said we can have up to 2 days lead time on when they're approaching their limit on their beds. So we're working with the two to try to coordinate that so we can get the lead to hit at the right time that we can get the facility stood up. So she's working at full time. And she comes to us with experience doing a lot of that kind of work. So we just put her on this last week. Again, our needs are personnel. You know, when we have these shelters up, that's going to be the
Should we be having that discussion now about trying to get some temporary help in your department?
Yeah, they're coming up with plans
And
and
I'll
and
come.
requests.
And I'm coming to that. Yep. So we're requesting, I put in an order for 100 cots, linens, hygiene kits. If you have someone sick, say we do 30 cots and someone's sick, we take that cot and all that linen and stuff out until it's sanitized and bring in a whole fresh set. We're not going to put people back in. And that gives us the ability to do a couple turns while things are being sanitized. So that's what my thinking was on that. We started working this weekend with, actually last week and then into the weekend with Chambers of Commerce to start working on the long-term plan for recovery, because that's going to be a big piece of this, and the chambers are going to lead some of that work. One of the things I need is preliminary damage assessment, so they're starting to work on that right now, and give us an idea of what damage to the economy looks like. We've talked to folks from OMB who talked to their gurus at their national organization, and they're predicting, they didn't talk about first quarter, but second quarter they're talking about a 40% drop in gross domestic product, 12% in third quarter, and then return to normal in fourth quarter. So that will be reflected in sales tax revenues, both locally and at the state level.
Good thing toilet paper's taxed.
Yeah. Let's see. Mason General still has 19 beds available. And I had, we're also tracking Kitsap and Thurston County. So who's got what in availability of beds. So that, and we keep that updated daily.
How is Kitsap County?
Harrison still had, I think they had 23 beds available, and I think there were 23 beds available in all of Thurston County. So Thurston County is running a little closer to being on the edge.
But with 265,000 people, that isn't a lot of beds.
No, it's not. So they're probably going to be getting, there's 4 hospitals that are coming in that the military's going to be bringing in. So the hospital ship is going to California. And it looks like they're going to be setting up 4 portable hospitals in Washington. And I would imagine those are probably going to go to the big population centers. So
500 beds apiece.
So that bumps that up.
There won't be nothing around for us, we'd have to take people.
Mhm. Right. So going to Commissioner Trask's point, been working with Wasalfo over the weekend. There's some money coming to Wasalfo, and looking at how we break that out to the local jurisdictions. And we would be receiving, and we're going to vote on this week, around $250,000 that would go towards sheltering, alternate care facilities, all those pieces that go with that part of the response. So one of the things I would like to do is I would like to get permission today to start looking at maybe a county employee that we could hire. They could go up and work admin and help us work the administrative part of that up at the EOC. That would be very helpful.
How would we work that? Is it a temporary hire or?
Probably temporary hire.
Just
So I will get with Dawn. So if that sounds good, we'll have the money coming in, so.
Kenya's overworked, she is. She is
Yeah.
barely holding on.
Right.
She's got so much.
Is there any provision to have quick budget adjustments during an emergency, or is there?
You would have time to adjust his budget, because he has capacity, we're early in the year, so you
Mhm.
could adjust his budget
Yeah.
before it gets to the point where he wouldn't have money.
So we might wanna put that on the agenda here shortly.
So what we get, we'll probably have to go into a budget adjustment as far as additional spending, so
Yeah.
we'd have to change the bottom line.
And there could be additional adjustments that need to be made, so
Yeah.
we'll know here in the next
So
couple
we
of months.
can capture that in quarter two.
Yes, in
Mhm.
June, we can capture
Yeah.
what we
Right,
know
because it
then.
will arrive in
But
quarter
two
two.
hundred fifty is a big amount,
Mhm.
so I think we have to, don't wanna leave you in a position where you have to choose something.
Right, so we're putting plans in place to work that money and
I was gonna say, do you, would, I'm good with adding that capacity.
Okay.
I don't know if you need any more.
Yeah,
well,
He just needs to
Speaking
we're
go.
kind of playing this by ear,
so
so.
would it be possible, I know some people, if we go for the shelter in, or there, if people are deemed non-essential, is there a way that we can grab another person that's already employed and
So-
put them out there?
Here's the discussion, Frank. So I've got money coming in, 250,000 for response. I'd like to use some of that to bring an admin assistant up to the EOC to help us coordinate the sheltering pieces at the EOC. Can we use a county employee that might be going home as non-essential? Do we do a temporary hire?
Mhm. Now, how would we, no, we would just leave that person on,
In their current
in their current
position?
status.
Actually, you'd make them.
Yeah,
one of those
and then just
employees.
change their pay.
Yeah.
Okay,
To accommodate that.
Do we need to do anything officially for him to create that position immediately?
They're approving now, he could have temporary staff.
Yeah, we could just do a temporary, it's not a new position, we have the position, you would just simply
You have the
redefine
position.
that individual. I may have to negotiate that with the unions, but I'm
Yeah.
sure that wouldn't
yeah,
be a
it's,
problem.
I don't have the position per se. This would be like an additional person we bring on.
Yeah,
to
and
work
he
with
doesn't
the
have it in the
EOC.
budget, and he doesn't have it,
And we
So-
may or may not
so
be
to
able to
create-
use existing staff, it
Yeah.
depends on who's available.
Yeah.
so to create a position, do we need to
Yeah, we
actually
would
do it up
need, yeah,
there?
we would need something from the,
That's what I thought.
from the diocese.
So tomorrow we can.
Yeah, let's put it
Okay,
on
all
there.
right, we can do that.
And I got word from Pacific Security, they will get somebody for us. It'll take them about a week. If you need them that quickly,
Mhm.
and it would run about $5,900 a week, 24/7.
Should we just tell them to start preparing for that now?
What do you think, Ross?
Yeah, we could use, if we have to, we could use it elsewhere, right?
I'm sorry?
If we don't have something set up for that, for the housing, building 10 or whatever we decide, we could use it elsewhere temporarily, as long as he's on board, he's ready to go.
Well,
Yes.
I think we're starting to work on building 10 to get it ready.
Yeah.
So I think that person is going to be, it's not gonna be a when can we use you, it's,
Yeah, because we're
Okay,
gonna need to
report
get
on
in
this day.
porta potties and showers and, you know.
But in security, you're not gonna be able to use them for other stuff except for security.
Right.
So the question, I guess we could have them stand outside, with nothing going on, but I meant when people are there.
I think it's gonna be a busy place for a while.
Mhm.
And so regardless, even if we're just setting up, that person is still gonna be needed to keep
And I am.
people out or,
And you can use them for other things other than just strictly security. I do know that the security over at, Safeway, same company,
Mhm.
does supplement their security functions.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but don't be getting us in trouble with the union, Frank.
Okay.
So you could use it for other
Okay.
items.
All right. We currently have, you see our inventory for procedure masks. And that will be supplemented tomorrow by a lot. So what did we order? We ordered just in cases of those things.
Yeah.
And so it was masks and gowns and gloves.
3,000, and I actually boosted it up when I talked to them yesterday on the phone. They reconsolidated into one order instead of 4 separate orders, and I added a little more to them. Excuse me, so we got gloves, gowns, masks coming, paper towels, disinfectant, the squirty stuff, the alcohol-based hand sanitizers, all that stuff is coming. Now, I don't know exactly where they're getting it from, but all I do know is in their email to us, there was no cost. We're not expecting, don't expect an invoice or anything for it.
I wonder if it's that stuff from the
Stockpile
Army, maybe
maybe,
the,
or-
yeah, stockpile.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking,
Security
national
stockpile.
stockpile maybe, yeah.
I think Shelton Dental also needs a call out.
Yeah.
Yes, they
They
donated-
donated 1,000 masks.
No, they're 3,600.
3,600, yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
$1,000 worth
Just
of
amazing.
masks. We
Yeah.
wrote them a thing so they can take it off as a hand receipt for them to.
That's crazy, good.
That was great on their part.
Yeah. We're working on messaging in Spanish. We've got the messages, we just need to get those out. We're working on signs for schools and parks. We had a case over the weekend where one of the, I think it's school ground, right, was being used for a soccer game.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna be working on that as well. And we're talking about doing videos for those who don't read. So we'll be working on that as well.
Actually,
That's a good point, yeah.
yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but we have quite a few.
Yeah. So we're doing Building 10 and the Alternative Treatment Center. We're working on both of those now. Maple Lane was pointed out as being available to us, but that's cleared down.
Well, I'm gonna call again, because when
Yeah.
I called there before, nobody seemed to know anything about it. I'm like, really? Cause they closed down the one up north. It was supposed to be for the entire west side of the state was going to use Maple Glen as a, if an overflow for either homeless or whatever that are in this system for quarantine or isolate. And nobody seemed to know it. Well, the person I talked to was a duty officer. He knew nothing about it, so I'm gonna go today
We don't have
and call him.
transportation either.
Yeah, that's a distance, I mean, it's Grand Mountain. It's a little distance from here to do that. And who would be doing the transports? You know, so,
So, moving on, seasonal homes. We're probably gonna see those being occupied as people leave Seattle to come to someplace that's got more
And
distance.
Mike's getting beat up on that one, I'm sure you are too, because the Cushman area is,
So the
Yeah.
people will be occupying those homes and,
but they're allowed to, there's nothing
no.
that the commission.
So well, I don't know about that. Other counties and cities have restricted VRBO and rental
but
access.
these are their owned homes.
Oh, okay, I got
But
it.
at the
Yeah.
same time though, I don't wanna leave what he just said though.
Right.
Because, yeah, we can't stop them at home, but we could do something, and I would like to, at least temporarily on that.
Right.
Because you're getting people.
In California, they have restricted it in certain counties.
In Oregon, and then I think,
Sonoma County has restricted it.
I'd like to hit that
Well, Kid Tax
ASAP.
was talking about it because what they're seeing is an influx of RVs coming over the hill
Yeah,
from Seattle.
well, I can tell you that that's happening a lot too, but those VRBOs are also booking out. And we can have an impact there, we may not be able to have an impact on the other, but we can impact that.
Okay,
yeah. So, and I think Long Beach has restricted theirs.
Westport did.
Westport
Westport
closed.
closed everything.
Yeah, copy and paste, let's get that,
For tomorrow?
I would like to see it tomorrow. It'd be one thing that we can do to help these.
Commissioner, can you work that?
Good call, Commissioner, that's.
I'll try and find and email you an example.
But mostly all small communities, they're just being kind of, for lack of a better term, inundated with
Yeah.
the resources and stuff, they're just, they don't have the capacity
Yeah.
to service them. So
Well, I
it's
think
more
that
of
even, as part of even touching on the resources, I think that there was people were standing outside Walmart to go in to get toilet paper, and they came from Thurston County.
Right.
And so
Right.
it was
Yeah.
quite the
Well,
scene.
the same thing at Safeway and QFC this last weekend. There was a lot of people, they didn't come with RVs, they just were coming here to get supplies because,
They couldn't get it in
yeah,
the
they couldn't
city.
get it. And the same thing for people from Kitsap County came out.
Yeah.
Well, these guys were going to sell it again.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places that are offering discounts if you book with them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now,
Wow.
I think that the stores are doing what they're doing. Is there anything that we can do to help put any type of regulation to stop this? Just let you guys know, it is starting to come back,
Yeah.
some of the stuff,
Mhm.
but one blip,
And that's
one
what-
thing, and it'll happen again. Is there anything that we can do?
I think a lot of it just has to be our messaging, because I
Right.
don't think that we can't control what private businesses are doing.
And some places are already putting on limits.
Right, a
Yeah.
lot of them have put on
Yes,
limits
Costco
already.
has limits,
Yeah.
Safeway has them, Walmart has limits. So I think, and they're also putting up other precautions too, other procedures.
Right.
So I think all we can do is support them in whatever decisions they're making.
I mean, Walmart was doing some good things when I was there the other day, in that as you got a cart, they kind of told you from a distance, go through over here, wipe the cart down. They had wipes and stuff for people to wipe the carts down and then into the store. So I appreciated seeing that, so I thought
But
that was
yesterday they had no wipes.
Yeah, I was gonna say they were out
They
of
Oh.
weren't
limits.
doing anything.
okay.
So, yeah, it lasted, I guess, as
Then-
long as it was bad stuff.
Then there's that. I did work with Aaron from,
Actually, can we help, can you order anything? Can we get wipes for them? Well, that, if you think about it, that's a bottleneck. That makes sense, you know, to be able to have wipes for them somehow.
Yeah.
I'm betting their supply chain is faster than ours.
I would think, but if they don't have them,
They had wipes at the checkout,
Yeah.
but they did not at the door.
yeah, they didn't have them on the carts,
Right.
because I saw
But
it.
they had them at the checkout, so they have a supply somewhere.
Right.
Might be not as much as they like, but I was disappointed that there was no wiping down of carts when we walked in.
Yeah, that's where it's gonna spread.
Yeah.
I think a lot of
They
it
did
is
bleach water.
personal accountability too.
Yeah.
You know, take your hand sanitizer and use it every time you can. Wash your hands a lot.
But again, a lot of people can't find hand sanitizer to buy to have, literally.
Yeah.
I know we told them to make it, but, you know, some just can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that took a while for me to get around.
Yeah.
So, the other thing is if we could maybe start providing some signage on, for some of these businesses, like especially the grocery, I know Pittsburgh got hammered over the weekend, just how to maintain social distancing and just some informational.
Okay.
We brought that up today at the briefing,
Yeah.
and that was
Yeah.
gonna be done. That's one of the two different signs we're looking at.
Yeah.
We're looking
And
at
we're looking-
another one, it's a short, sweet one about something being closed for a reason, you know, to help curb the COVID-19 virus. That's why this is closed in English and in Spanish. And put those posted up places.
We're asking the schools to do that.
What about the places where they are, like the bars that are opening up at night?
Okay.
That's, several,
And I
For
had
food
heard
or
those.
for both,
drinks?
yeah.
Yeah. And
I contacted you on one of them. when
Right,
they
I
were-
got with that one. That one quit.
They had a whole big thing going. They were the only game in town.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a speakeasy.
Yeah. I'll get with our food folks and find out what's going on.
Maybe even just someplace where we can, because I hate to bother you all the time.
Is the barbecue place still going?
Yes?
Oh, thank God, okay.
Yeah.
It'll be heading up there, so.
There was some question, I guess, about their seating arrangements, because
Yeah.
they're outside and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I
You still
guess,
have to
Still
social,
have to-
you still
yeah.
have to distance
Yep.
yourself.
well,
And
and
they could do it probably
Yeah.
up there in the outside.
and
one,
they
but-
are, they were distancing themselves, they
but,
just,
Yeah,
they took all the foods and all the things that people used to get for their sauces.
yeah.
That's all gone off the tables,
Yeah.
they don't allow any of that
Good
anymore.
idea.
Good.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
Did
love that
did start
place.
working with
It's
Aaron
so
from
good.
Olympia Master Builders yesterday. We conversed several times. And she provided some documents, and Christopher and I are going through those. I think most things they're suggesting, we already do. So I think it's kind of shock and blast to all the folks they work with, not just us, so other counties as well.
I think Mason County needs a shout out too, because we've heard from several other people that Mason County's ahead of the game, because we started early and started preparing, so I think our people in Mason County rock.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Except for that
I mean-
one guy that just
Well,
hates you with everything he's got.
And then I got, Lydia was up at 4:15 this morning and let me sleep. I really appreciate that, because I was up till 11 last night working other things, so.
Well, and
She's
just,
really
just so
rock,
you
so.
know, I got a text message from the person in a long argument that was going on, and even he said himself, because like I'm saying, that's not what he said. The claim is, he says, it's just the flu. That's not what he did. What happened is, and the guy sent the text, I asked him over and over again, is it the flu? Is it the flu? And he said yes. Like, there's a big difference between him sitting up there saying, it's just the flu, folks, and him just answering you and saying, it's the flu, you know?
So actually it coined new terms. So it was we've been talking about influenza-like illness, and we've used that for years. Well, now they're using the term corona-like illness.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just kind of adjusting our mindset around that.
Yeah. But
And-
you didn't sit there in front of everybody and just tell them, hey guys, don't worry, it's just the flu. That's not what happened.
No. So,
Dave, are you still on community development?
oh, Christopher, so for our own group, so I put out an email to our folks, public health, you are essential in a public health emergency, plan on.
Tag your
Get
in.
rid
know,
of that down.
So expect long hours and possibly working weekends. So they were brought into the loop. Christopher, would you like to brief on what we're doing in planning and
So I
building?
did want to bring the commissioners up to speed with Kel and I work as a team for community development and the essential priorities in our department for housing, supply and demand, keeping things moving forward for economic recovery, because this is projected to be at least 8 months after this event. So between now and then, we implemented, as soon as you guys got the telework policy out, we did situational telework for staff that's already in a high-risk category. We already got folks that are doing inspections via digital. We're trying to use as much means as necessary to keep us moving forward with our clientele, so we
I think
don't
that's
stop.
critical.
So,
Awesome.
yeah, unfortunately, you know, it's.
So we're taking our modes of plans home. and
I was
doing
gonna say,
kind of
just so
review.
you know, your department, your building department is probably the least complaining about one right now from people that are calling in.
Well, with that being
shift,
said,
but-
you know, I'm.
You know, they
we
get
have
it,
the
they
doors
feel like
shut
they're still
down.
moving.
People are coming in through the via glass shield from the old, because we're in the old building that has that. So that works well for at least helping those that are walk-in. We're solely appointment-based for submittals as well as for pickups. We're doing those, we're rotating them throughout the week, so it's not a full bombardment, limit those who are coming in to do that. And it's, so far it's working okay until things change, but try to keep people moving forward, keep working while we can, until governor or the feds say otherwise.
At a UPS store, they've actually put hard, like plastic wrap
Plexi.
on, no, it's a hard plastic, and like, you might do it, but it's completely see-through, and they've got it going all the way down the door, so you can do essential mail services and stuff still with them from UPS. They keep a table this far away, so you can go like this and get it through, and nobody,
Yeah, and that,
the ingeniousness of people are,
and just one last thing, is that we were already at a skeleton crew, so anything that we can keep our staff working is a benefit, but, you know, it's, a lot of people at this time, they're very cautious, and fortunately, a lot of those who already had appointments just for like, pre-app appointments, they're finding ways. We hadn't had the group video up and going, we had a contractor actually set it up and did it for us. It was a real good learning curve prior to us getting our Zoom meetings through the county, so it's working. And that's mostly all of them set up for today, are all Zoom meetings.
Good.
So, yeah, people have plans in their hands, so if they do a shelter in place and builders aren't working, they'll have stuff in their hands. As soon as it comes off, away we go. There
it's an
will be
opportunity
a
to get
lag.
caught up in things.
Yeah. Ross, is there anything you wanna?
This is working really good. One thing I gotta say, if you come to our meetings and come to our, or else go on to Zoom when we have our Zooms, I gotta say, this is probably the best group I've ever worked with, bar none,
Yeah.
really. People are, you mention something, you get a hand saying, I'll take it, I'll do that. It's been phenomenal. It really has been. It's been long hours, but it's been phenomenal by trying to get stuff done and accomplished with this group. Everybody has got skin in the game of it. We completed all of our ESF functions that are involved in this. All people have come up and said, yep, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll get it rolling. And I gotta say, it's been doing really well. We do have our succession plan, as of the 6th. Oh, he was just here. Ryan will be taking over as the incident commander, and I will be his deputy commander. Right now, he's my deputy. We're gonna switch every 2 weeks. But we're still gonna be there during all of this, because we still have other things that we do while then helping each other out. And I believe you're doing that with Chris. They'll be doing the switch offs too. We did that with all of our functions so that nobody gets burnt out during this phase. And I asked the ESFs to do that also from there, so they have somebody else that's up and running that can take over in case the real world kind of comes into play and stuff for us. But it's been phenomenal, and we do have everything set on certain schedules. Schedules are working out pretty well, and paperwork's going very well. So we're doing everything a week at a time right now. So if he's like that 203 I sent out for everybody, the organizational charts, those are good for a week. And we'll do, every Monday, one of those will come out. So I'll make sure you guys get all those, and you'll know who's doing what and what phase they're in.
Also, could you, I get these at the meetings, the county reports. So could you also include these guys? And
Love
we'll
to.
email them out?
Yeah, I didn't have one of those this morning yet to send that with it, or else I would have piled it all. Yeah, we're trying to put that out, and your guys are all on the JIC list now, the Joint Information Center list. So you should be getting everything that we put out. You guys should be getting that. I'm sorry you weren't on that list. I think that was part of our, if you don't have the
As long as you're
information, how
talking,
can you
you tell
put
me
it
that
out,
helps.
you know?
Yep.
Yeah,
I don't think I was either, to be honest
So-
with you.
yeah.
These, I try to have done by 1700 daily for the next morning. So
Should be
I
able to get
shoot
those.
those out as soon as I get them.
And Norma Brock, I don't know if you guys know Norma or not, she
She's
works with Central
amazing.
Mason. Central Mason Fire and EMT, a godsend for us here. She's actually part of an IMT team, so is Casey Whitehouse, who is our liaison chief, who's in charge of all the ESF folks and getting them running. Thank God we got those guys. I think that's one of the reasons why we're so advanced.
Casey will also he'll be transitioning out
Right.
because fire season is coming,
Yeah,
and he's the fire guy.
yeah.
And so
And
it'll be
Bo,
Bo, yeah.
I had
Okay.
Bakken, sorry, I always call him Boken. The kid, Bo the kid. Bo.
He looks like a kid, but he's actually been around a long
I
time.
know, I was shocked.
I know he looks like
Yeah.
a kid.
It's like Son of Dave we've been having some fun with some of this here. I didn't get to introduce to Dr. Stein, and then he was here at a thing, and I thought he was Dave's son. I'm like, oh, is that your son? That's son of Dave's son? And he's like, yeah, that's Dr. Stein. I'm like, ooh, boy, I felt like, about this big.
So like a penny.
Now he has taken on Son of Dave, is his new nickname for him, so, yeah. Yeah, Son of Dave. But really good group. We are trying to keep everything, we're doing a lot of the contingency planning because we know how things keep changing. And for a while there, it was changing 2-3 times a day from Department of Health and also the governor's office. And I'm really interested to see what he does today. I really hope he gives some good guidance to go along with if he does make this shelter in place order come out. I really do hope he gives good guidance with it because there's a lot of questions around that.
Is the governor speaking today? Do we have a?
He was supposed to speak yesterday too, and we had noon and then 4:30 is what it said on the TVW site, and
I'm not gonna say who, but somebody said, I got good news and I got bad news, and after the end of the conversation, I asked what the bad news was, they said the governor's gonna be speaking at 4:30.
yeah,
That was the,
Well, that was part of our pushback to
yeah.
DOH over the weekend was, you get us prepped for things and then they don't happen. And that creates a lot of anxiety amongst, the health jurisdictions. So we plan on what you put out.
Yeah,
And when we get ambiguous things from DOH, it doesn't help us.
yeah.
So, and some places are making it up as they go,
Which doesn't help.
either. So we had a couple of those administrators yesterday were talking about that, and they're frustrated. Especially those along the Oregon border, because they're having to coordinate not only their Washington side,
Yeah.
but the Oregon side.
Right. Jumping both.
I had a question that came up. Parks has closed.
Yes.
We have a concessionaire who is
that was interesting.
up at the park and asked if they can come down to the Building 10 parking lot. You're making plans for Building 10. I had put to the board a question of whether or not that person can use that parking lot. But if you have plans for that parking lot, does it make sense for a concessionaire to even consider
Actually,
coming
isn't
down
it
there
better?
to use that?
If you put that person all the way on the corner, isn't it better? Because you're gonna have a lot of people,
A lot of
maybe,
people.
and be able to have
He has a business license that he's required to have for the city of Shelton. He already has insurance as it relates for being a concessionaire on county property. So we've got licensing
I
and
guess I'm not
insurance
seeing a
covered.
problem right up front with it.
I think my concern is, are we putting one person over other people? Do you know what I mean?
We've
Yeah.
already,
One business
we
over
already
another
did that.
business.
we already contracted
Yeah, we
with
did a
her.
bidding,
Contracted with
we did a bidding
Oh.
process
Yeah,
with them.
that was a bidding process for that one. Yeah.
It was actually a bidding
The
process.
Sand Hill one was
That was
not
fun
as
thing to
much
remember.
because that went back
Yeah.
to the little league
Yeah,
organization.
but that one was bidded,
Yeah.
bid.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Back in
So-
19.
Can I give them the okay?
I think so, yeah.
But we,
Well,
And I'm looking for the board.
so initially, I didn't really have a concern with it, I think it's fine, but does it make sense if we're gonna be using that as a isolation thing to, I mean,
To have more people coming in.
yeah, I don't know, I mean,
Well,
that
they
would
won't
be
be
my
coming
only,
in the building,
yeah,
because the people for isolation are supposed to, like, stay inside the building,
Yeah.
you know, is what you're looking for,
Well,
Right.
what about-
not to
what about
roam
the-
around as much.
The Bank One parking lot.
we don't know.
That's not ours,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
This
But I
person
mean,
bid to
If
be
we're,
on the
if we're
planning.
isolating, that would be an option for him to maybe park there. I don't
Except
know.
for
Yeah.
we don't own it, we can't.
Well,
do that.
and the people at Building 10, we're gonna be feeding through a contract. So that's not gonna be an advantage to him because,
Except for the people that are working. Or are you gonna feed them also?
I'll be with that.
so maybe we say, okay, for now, and then when we fire up building 10, I mean, probably.
Yeah.
But the
Those would
building,
be
that may be an
flexible,
issue.
Depending on.
I will do that.
Because we might need the parking
Yeah.
lots as well.
Yeah,
And what
because
if-
we're not gonna bring in porta potties and shower trailer and some other,
Right.
logistical pieces.
Right, yeah, so the parking lot is going to be used not by the county with
Right.
other, because the shower trailer is
Services.
big, the other,
Yeah.
the
Well,
porta
it's,
potty.
hopefully, we're looking at a two bay only shower to start with, because that's, the other ones they want,
Yeah.
way too much money.
Yeah.
You can rent them, and then you have to also have a bladder, and then you also have to,
No.
have somebody come there and take the water out of the bladder, because you can't drop it right into the sewer system there. If we could do that, it would be pretty simple,
Yeah.
but you can't,
So,
yeah.
Still that water, you know, the droplets, that's off
Yeah.
the body.
well, we're not talking about COVID people. We're talking about people who are ill from other things who aren't allowed in the shelters. If they are ill with COVID,
We
we're
don't-
going to put that up at the middle school.
But we
with a-
don't know they have COVID for a while. Just to say.
Yeah.
Briefing with the Board of County Commissioners, give you a yell right back.
So, seems like there's maybe a
Thank
couple
you,
of
brother.
questions that
Okay,
need to be
right back.
hammered out on
Right.
this, but
Yeah.
maybe in the interim, he can,
And and look at other properties perhaps, if they're gonna allow, because I'm assuming they're not gonna expect a whole bunch of walk-up traffic there. They're gonna be doing deliveries or drive-up or whatever.
Predominantly driving.
Yeah, we have another piece of property that's got a good parking lot over by the old Catholic rectory.
Yep.
Just,
Yep.
if that becomes necessary, just
That might
think
be a good one, yeah.
outside the box.
for the parking lot at Mel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
that one would be
Yeah.
drive-up service.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that'd be good.
If you get that one, if they
Yeah,
get that one,
actually,
make sure they say thank you.
I'll
That'd be huge.
I'll
He
mention
has
that.
really good food too. That's another one that's got good food.
Was this at Mendoza?
Yeah, he's got good food.
Small truck.
Okay,
I still like the barbecue place better up in Belgium,
That's pretty good.
obviously.
so are there any questions?
Oh, millions.
I know.
But I
You heard
also,
and answered a lot of my.
I also like to thank Sharon for coming and being at the meetings. I know all three of you can't because of the, you know,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
you're not allowed to be together, some kind of court order against each other or something. But it's been really nice having it, because we can turn to her for a good, hey, is this good? And, you know, getting the heads up on stuff right away to get people rolling. Because a lot of times, some of this stuff comes into us and we have to move pretty quick on it. And I really appreciate you being there to help us out with it.
The nursing crew has been doing a great job of running this stuff down and making sure that they're getting the real facts, because we get a ton of reports every day, and they're false reports. So, and we're trying to work with the sheriff's office because they're the ones who interact with those the most,
Yeah.
so.
Yep. It's been good. It's been a very, very good group to get together. Very good group.
Anything else?
Can we take a 10-minute break? 5, 10? Sure.
I'm good. Okay, I'll break. Are y'all ready? All right. You're on.
So now the reason for the paper. This is on my chair. Whenever I have something on my chair, it's like, what's wrong?
What is that? All right, we're going to move into our public works briefing this morning. We'll go around the room for introductions.
Peter Gallen.
Jennifer Byerly
Richard Dickinson.
Loretta Swanson.
Randy Netherland?
Kevin Shooty.
and Sharon Trask. Take her away, Loretta.
All right, so our first order of business is some follow-up. We, last week, spoke with you about the Grizzly crane and the issues we're having with that. And Richard and Zach have been looking at various options and what those cost, and are bringing forward a nice equipment purchase recommendation to commissioners.
Yeah, so you, the startling thing to me about this is we've, at the end of 2016, authorized to rebuild it, which happened early in 2017. And literally, we've spent about $20,000 a year, every year, including 2017, on keeping that piece of equipment running. It just, it's a light-duty piece of equipment doing a heavy-duty piece of work. It really is not the piece of equipment for this job. But we do have options and we priced them out. So the three are, it's a 3-piece unit if you replace the whole thing. It's orbital, the jib, and the main boom. The main boom is what's cracked and damaged currently. The orbital isn't exactly, it's not taking grease anymore. So its time is limited as well.
Which also has been a repetitive issue on
This will be the third one
Yes.
since 2017.
So the orbital, what does that do?
That's just what makes it so it can turn and open and close.
Yeah, okay.
So bare bones, just to repair it and keep it limping along, is about $23,000. It's $22,900 on our estimate to replace the entire boom. And mind you, all these, what we're replacing them with are rebuilt. They're not new. So option 2 would be to replace the whole unit, including the orbital and the jib. That's $66,000. And our recommendation is to replace it with a rubber tracked excavator. It'll serve more than one purpose. It'll actually be able to compact a little bit more. The
It's funny,
price-
I love, because we had those conversations back then.
Yeah, so I mean, it's familiar.
Really?
We were talked into the other kind of, that makes a lot more sense to me though, and it did then. That we,
Buying new.
yeah, a piece of equipment that actually, because then you can, but you had to do, if I remember, you had to do some other work on the grounds to make that possible. Because the other one was set in a certain manner that you just couldn't bring it in.
Well, that's what they were looking at before was, it was too big. It was
Is
a
that what it is?
much larger excavator, and this is more appropriately sized for,
And this would work in the
And it
framework
could
you already
serve
have, the
other
grounds you already have?
purposes.
yes, it would function where it's at. We would have to do a little modification for our own benefit, just kind of a fail-safe. One, we don't want them, it has track lockouts, but if that does it, we want to be able to tether it in place also, just as a reminder, so you don't just go
Makes
right
sense
over
to
and
me.
into it, you know, just a couple of safety items are pretty easy to take care of. And
Drill
that,
something in the ground and lock it down, because that going sideways would be rough.
Like
Right.
a dog in a gym.
but moving forward, this actually will get us to make a step forward towards the future too as well.
What's the life expectancy on a new one?
On a excavator, you know, I don't know right off yet, but I can definitely find out.
Not 4 years like what we did in 16.
Right.
Yeah, oh,
5 years?
oh,
One of the
easily
benefits,
faster.
if it's smaller, if we have other equipment like that, if something did break, we could bring something in. That was one of the things we talked about before. But again, they explained to us that we would have to rebuild the whole thing, that's why we went against it.
Right.
If you can do the other, that makes a lot more sense, because if we had to, we could even rent a piece to bring in, right? If
Conceivably,
yeah, if
yes.
something bad happened,
Yes.
where we don't have that as a,
That's
well, you
not-
do, you have to bring stuff from the other side now and do it.
Right, and see, we rented when, in the interim, when they did this before, it was very large, it was too big for the piece, for the area, and it was also steel track, so it chewed up the floor like crazy. So that's why we're going with the rubber track.
How are we sitting in the budget?
This is not in our budget. We do have some items in our budget that we would not have to do, but it surely wouldn't account for the 250,000, up to 250,000. But I think we have one bid that came in that's right around 215 for a piece of equipment. We have at least 2 more people we're looking for quotes from.
And we have potentially some value in the Grizzly. And then we also had planned another $20,000 expenditure. So we have, I want to say maybe at least $20,000 to $30,000 in the budget that could be applied to the purchase of new equipment. And other options would be to pull out of fund balance, which is a potential, or have ER&R make the purchase and then we pay
What fund balance?
ER&R
I mean, that's a serious question, what fund balance?
from solid waste reserve. Which would not be my first recommendation, but it's a potential.
I do like the ER&R potential. And we would have money to put down, they make the purchase and everything.
They
And then
make
we
the
do
purchase.
the
They
and
pay
then-
that, yeah.
Right.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I like
I'm
that.
supportive too.
buy once, cry once.
Yeah.
Okay,
Alrighty,
thank you.
we'll get with, I see Jennifer taking careful notes
Buy
over
once,
there.
cry once.
So we'll double check on
Channeling
finances.
my father-in-law there.
That's funny.
All right. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, Richard and Zach, for all of the research on options and
Oh,
what
yeah.
makes the most sense here.
When it rains, it pours, yeah.
Yes, it does. Okay, next item, commissioners, is the request to execute the Public Works Board loan. And I'll start off with saying that we received this loan offer in mid-October, I believe, and needed to execute this within 6 months or loan offer is off the table. So we're rapidly approaching that date, and that is mid-April. And we've had quite a few briefings to take a look at, well, things have been evolving. We've been looking at what the actual project is. So what does the total project cost look like and what are we building? We also have had updated financial analysis and reports from FCS Group to take a look at what this means long-term for our Belfair sewer finances. And we are recommending at this time to accept the loan for $8 million. And we're also asking that commissioners consider putting in place financial controls. I do want to be clear that from my perspective, we need to make a decision about the loan itself prior to the mid-April deadline. The implementing financial controls, while I and maybe our finance folks may think that's awesome to do at the same time, I want to be clear that you have an option on that it is not 100% necessary to implement those at this stage, but we don't want to lose track of it because these are the controls that our state auditor and that the Public Works Board will be looking at. State auditors, certainly during our annual audit, Public Works Board, when it comes time to execute the final loan, when the project's closed out, they'll be looking at what's our track record been? Did we increase our ERU rate? How many ERUs did we add each year to the system? So they'll be looking at that to determine what our final loan contract looks like on closeout. And I guess just to go back to what the purpose overall, so as you know, we've been working with Kennedy Jenks to update our general sewer plan, and this is done in partnership with the City of Bremerton and Port of Bremerton. And the City of Bremerton has very much affirmed that this is a project that is needed to serve their southern boundary of PSIC, and it's very important in maintaining MIC designation. So that review is coming up soon, and if the city has not demonstrated that they've made progress to facilitate growth and development of the MIC, then there's a potential that they could lose that very important designation. So from that perspective, this project and this effort is very important on a regional basis as well. The other thing that I think is important to consider regarding this loan is that, as you know, we've been using REIT and .09 funds to help with our current debt repayment. And anything we can do, from my perspective, to help lighten that burden, to be able to free up those funds for other county purposes is a good thing. Because right now we're taking resources that could be applied elsewhere.
How does this do that?
By constructing a project and by bringing additional ERUs and additional rate revenues in, we could look at what the overall debt is and potentially look at debt restructuring in the future, or reducing what that need is for REIT or 09 funds. That's not a promise or a guarantee by any means, Commissioner. I understand that. It's kind of a bet, but without doing this, there is no, we have what we know, essentially. We've got what we know. The other piece is that by constructing a project, again, it could facilitate additional growth and development, and if that happens, then we've got, like any utility, additional ratepayers, and that helps to offset the impact. The more ratepayers you have, the better you are to stabilize a rate or keep a rate stabilized. So those are the two things that I think are very important to keep in mind when we're considering this loan. And again, the other option is to keep as we are, and then we know what that looks like. We're committed to our continued REIT and 09 contributions, and we are, we would not be enabling or helping facilitate the MEC development. Those are a couple of things that I think are important to consider. Richard, anything in terms of the rate, or, sorry, I've been
No.
yammering away here. Are there things
No,
that
I
you would
just
like
see
to
the
add?
opportunity right now that, for Belfair itself at the water reclamation facility, the potential to use some of this $8 million loan to get it up to speed, since it's all dependent on that function. At that financing level, I think it's a good deal. I mean, really, I think it's a great deal. Otherwise, we're gonna have, I mean, right now, I got one anoxic pump out of 4 that runs, and it's running on a failed seal. We're in dire straits there as well. So how we get that money to get that up to speed any other way, I'm not sure. This is probably the least impacted way to get that back up to speed where it needs to be, to take care of all the deferred maintenance that's happened throughout its existence. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
Commissioner, you also asked for me to take a look at how else, I guess just timing, about, so I'll talk a bit about where we are on the overall design project. And we've had several new development proposals come in pre-apps and preparing to make applications. And if, for example, so I'll back up, our current sewer code has a provision for latecomer agreements. So if a developer were to come in now and say, I'm ready to go, I'm not waiting around for Mason County to finish their design and get some pipe in the ground, we're ready to go at this time. We, as a condition for the development, could say, here's what your trunk line needs to look like, and you're gonna be building that as a condition of your development. Then they could ask us to implement a latecomer agreement for that extra. And so that's a way for the developer to recapture what they overbuilt for the overall system. So that's one way to recapture that. I still have not run to ground the business about if they were to upfront and oversize, whether or not the county could participate in the oversizing of the materials. I still need to nail that down. But that would be another potential way to address, I guess, the oversizing issue and how that's divvied up between the county and a developer. So those were 2 items, Commissioner, that you had asked, I believe, last time. Also, last time we briefed, you were wondering about the rate increase and how that looked in comparing to neighboring communities, and how that may or may not impact our commercial property owners. And Richard did some analysis on that.
Richard, did you compare it by gallon or by?
No, gosh, I know I got more of these.
Again, the reason why is 155 gallon ERU in comparison to ERUs with their surrounding areas.
Another copy, Richard, no. Oh, okay.
No, I got another one. Okay, so I did City of Bremerton, City of Shelton, and West Sound Utility District in Port Orchard. And basically, I got from Belfair Water District what the current flows are, just to validate that we're charging them with, because we basically charge them based on ERUs that they typically use. So say Safeway, I think Safeway uses it's like 26 ERUs. So it's whatever that base rate is times 26, that's their monthly bill. So for Safeway but I gotta back up. So City of Bremerton, City of Shelton, Port Orchard, they have a base rate and then it's charged on usage. And so I calculated out, this is how many gallons that Safeway uses, and then applied their rates to come up with what their charge would be. So let's say, of course, Mason County is the most expensive. Safeway currently in 2019 there's $2,544 a month. That's what their bill is. City of Shelton, it's 1,860, Bremerton, it's 1150 or 55, and West Sound is 1352. So basically, it's the economy of scale coming out at play there. You know, same thing for McDonald's. We're currently, what do I got here for their bill? I'm gonna have to look over McDonald's. I got theirs mixed up here. McDonald's is $988.80 currently. It's $797 in Shelton, $483 in Bremerton, $554 at Port Orchard. It's the same sort of thing, but the difference for us really is, so if they'd have ran based on cost, they'd have ran already, because it's, you know, significantly more expensive there. So if we applied what we want to bring it up to, based on this, that would be a $318 a month increase for Safeway, $123 for McDonald's, and $40 for Starbucks.
This is applying just the flat rate. What I believe we heard City of Bremerton say is that for the customers within the PSIC that would receive our service, they would also apply the factor similar to City of Shelton if they're providing water service in the UGA and not within the city boundaries, then there's an increased rate.
Right, this is all inside.
Exactly.
They
So
have an
this-
outside rate.
Yeah, so this is comparing just flat,
Well,
flat,
this
but
is
there would
closer-
be an
This is
escalator.
more accurate than what's been presented to me in the past, so I'm appreciative, because you did go by the gallons, and it makes a difference.
Yeah, yeah.
On some of the others. And they are moving closer, but we're by far a lot more expensive than, except for Shelton, but even then, you know, 2,800 versus 1,800 is a huge difference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
But
again,
at
this
least this
doesn't
is-
apply the
at least this is-
factor.
At least this is more
Yeah,
accurate.
it is.
And I'm
what it is.
appreciative.
Yeah,
And I'm appreciative. Well, no, it's nice to have the real numbers, because then it is what it is, like you're
Right.
doing.
Yeah.
So it's a compliment. I thank you for giving me
oh, yeah.
stuff that apples to apples instead of apples, oranges, pears, and bananas.
Yeah, oh, yeah, believe it. This is more like broccoli.
Gotta eat your broccoli.
You got it. So, yeah, that's it right there. It's, like you say, it's gallon for gallon, what it would be.
Were there any questions on the budget impacts? I kind of distilled that in a very short little piece here, and we have not run cash flow projections.
Budget impact?
Just on the front page there, it just kind of identifies really
Yeah,
the highlights of the loan agreement itself, rather than exactly what the increase would be to
And
our.
did you look at all, and what I was talking to you about perhaps a utility district or something else for that area up there, so they could pay for their own?
Yes, but I don't have an answer for that, Commissioner.
What is that?
Sure.
Can you?
Yeah. There's different types of, you know, utility districts, industrial development districts and the like. If you put together a utility district, which they should have done with Belfair originally, but they didn't want to at the time, then the district, you can actually have the increase or the payment of the loan on the properties itself that are benefiting from it. You know, using $100, 10 properties, each one, you know, would pay $1 a year for 10 years. And that would pay for the difference in the increase that they would get from the value increase in the properties as well. And with that, you know, if that was an option or opportunity, I was more interested in some of this concept. But go ahead.
So in this case, since we have a loan, usually, and I used the term previously, a utility, a ULID, and that would be a way to finance construction and then allow for the people within the district to repay over time. In this case, we have a loan, and so we don't have the need for a ULID, but if I'm understanding the concept, what you're thinking, Commissioner, is that we would describe still a boundary that for those people that are served by this sewer extension, that they would have a different rate essentially.
Or
Or
a
consider it
different
a
hookup,
different-
or a different,
Right, something
or
that would,
a piece that's put on to their property tax, that can be done as well. So that they pay an extra $1 a year for $10. So that that investment goes into directly pays for that.
yeah. So what we
So what
would,
would that do to potential, so we know that this is essentially building a backbone
right,
kind of system. What would that do to the ability to have to stem out from there? And I mean, wouldn't that be adding an additional burden there that might delay or kind of stifle development?
Yeah, but it shouldn't be enough to work with stifle development. If that's the case, then we shouldn't be considering it in any way for ourselves. Because we can't, the system that we have already, I don't know if we're gonna go there yet. I don't wanna get on my soapbox yet unless it's time, sorry.
No, go for it.
I don't wanna step over anybody, I just wanna,
I'm all for the soapbox.
Okay.
Okay.
I've been sticking with this, trying and hoping to find an answer to be able to put things through. And 15 years ago, 12 years ago, right in there, the people in my community were told a lot of the same things that we're hearing right now, we're talking about right now. You know, it's for the future, it's for this, it's for that. Here we are, 10 years later, after it opened, and we're just now finally looking at our first real one that'll benefit, the first major one of, you know, a couple hundred units in an apartment complex in all those years. But the community was told all these things, and the burden was put on them. The county has been changed a little bit because we've absorbed some of that burden over these years, and it's been wonderful, and it's allowed us to survive out there, because the truth is if they put these costs on, the bread box of Mason County, which our sales tax comes from, would have been devastated. But the county has stepped up. Now, with that being said, I hate to be so aggressively against something. I can't express how much I'm against even considering doing the same thing we did to them before. Again, the same promises are there, the same idea we'll go through, but we're talking about mainly one person, one property owner who I respect and I like. But that's where the greatest benefit would come. The county eventually would, or maybe would, but we may be talking 10 years again. I hope not. I think it would come faster than that. But right now, they can put septics up there. Because all that changed compared to when this happened all those years ago. This has changed where now they can put septics, like transit is putting septic in, that's part of the design. So these businesses still can come. And then eventually you can run a pipe to where businesses already exist. That's another option. But the idea of taking on and not doubling, but it's pretty close. I never got that number, but I think we're at in the tens now for our debt on that system. And to put $8 million in debt on it to go nowhere, to go over a piece of property that potentially will bring us the revenue, it's speculation. It is like building a spec home, except for we're not in the business of speculation. It is going to make certain properties extremely valuable, but on the back of us. And if we're not here, there's no guarantee that that doesn't become a huge amount of money that's put on those people there. And I've got to try and protect them. I don't want to go to them and even talk about doing the same thing to them again that happened to them 10 years ago. With that being said, also, the idea of our 09 monies and our REIT, I appreciate you talking about taking the burden off. It's not taking the burden off, it's gonna put $400,000 of burden on, right? Is that the right? 50,000 per million. So that puts $400,000 of burden on. This community barely was able to withstand, and I'm one of the ones that was here after the fact. But the community was very mad every time we did anything, move money from REIT to pay for this sewer that they consider the Belfair sewer. Even though Belfair never had anything to do with it, it's a county sewer, it's a Mason County sewer. The idea of taking more money out of REIT and stuff and not having that money for other projects, again, to me, does not make sense. Yes, there's a good possibility that this is gonna be beneficial, but there's also a huge risk involved. And what we're doing, again, is speculation, the same thing that was done before. If these businesses were up there, at least when they built the other sewer, they had businesses and everything already there. This time there's nothing. This time it is 100% pure speculation. Right now, we will currently pick up one that's up there that we're not gonna get now. That one apartment complex is already coming in here. So that one is not part of the new thing. So all I can say is this is one of those ones where I'm trying to say it as gently as I can, but, you know, I have to stand against it with everything I have eventually, because I would see it as being a horrible thing to do to my community again, a second time, especially this time with nothing up there. And we're looking at how many years before it gets built out. 1 year you up on top of the hill, paying $100, $108 a month, isn't gonna cover 8 million. So we pick up over the next 10 years, we pick up 50. That's not gonna cover it. That covers one of the millions. So, sorry, as calm as I could with that soapbox, just please understand. This one is about as emotional and as deep in one of the reasons why I became a commissioner and who I am for my community that there is. And I wish that we were having this conversation without cameras today, because, you know, this doesn't need to be a political thing. It doesn't need to be, it's just.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. I don't view it as a political thing at all. I think it's a conversation about the work that we've done over the past few years to put ourselves in a position to capture legislative support for this project that's critical not only to Belfair, but also to our partners on the Kitsap side. It was why I voted for the initial capital budget request in 2017, which we got $500,000 out of. It's why I was supportive of the request we made in the last long legislative session that netted us the $2 million grant and the $8 million in loans from the Public Works Board. There were a lot of opportunities along the way to refine this, and we've done it even to the point where we were looking at putting pipe down Log Yard and a lift station down there so that there was additional benefit. And that is obviously not possible at this point, not because of us or not because of our unwillingness to try, but because of the potential development down there just is farther away than it might have been presented to us initially. We still are stubbing under, in this plan, under the roundabout. So it's not just benefiting one landowner. I know that has been a kind of a consistent message from you, Commissioner, and I have to respectfully disagree. I think there are other property owners along Phase 1 that would benefit from this and that would become customers of it. But let's look practically at this as well, given our current situation. We have a ticking clock in front of us to make this decision. I don't know when we will ever have an opportunity to even entertain a conversation around the kind of development Belfair needs at this rate again. I just don't know when that is, and I know that there's risk involved with it. We're working hard to take that risk and reduce it. They've come back a number of times with other iterations of this. The last iteration was $1 million less than the one before it, which is a real savings. We have financial commitments from the city of Bremerton that continue to be affirmed by the city of Bremerton. And so I don't know, and Commissioner Trask might have insight being on the Public Works Board as to what this would mean for our ability to go back and ask for resources in the future, whether that be debt reduction or to look at doing a project again up there. But on the other side of it too, it's getting more and more difficult for me to justify to my communities that we continue to subsidize Belfair at the rate we are. And there's no quick or easy way out of this. And it might mean that we are dedicating REIT and 09 longer term, but we have projects that happen in other parts of the county that our leverage is tied up in Belfair. Just the bottom line of that. Unless we can get Belfair to grow, our financial analysis says that your community would have to pay $350 a month to be sustainable. I have a hard time stomaching the $108, and I don't think we should entertain that. But I tell you, I don't want to go up there and have a conversation that goes back to where we were when I ran in 2016 and when we signed this deal, the first capital budget request in 2017, which said we're gonna force sewer down Old Belfair Highway in a customer grab, or that we're gonna raise your rates to $350 a month. That will kill Belfair. And so my support of this has been consistent, and it's been consistent because I can't support the status quo, which does not allow for the kind of growth and opportunity that we need to have in Belfair. And so, for those reasons, I am still supportive of this proposal.
But the opportunities are still there, it's just not at this rate. If we don't do something today, we still can get loans, we still can go offer bonds. None of that changes. The difference is how much we pay for it, because this is a loan of 0.79. So all those opportunities are still there. It's just that they're there when we have something to actually connect to. And I appreciate the idea of the concept of you have to explain over the years about the REIT, because I have too, as you know, that's something that keeps coming up. We're talking about adding a whole other third more. So if we had a hard time before, how much easier is it when we're saying we're taking in more? And do we actually even have a full $400,000 in REIT in 09 that we can just cut out for the next 10, 20 years? Because that's what we're talking. Did you want to answer that, or?
Oh.
Because that wasn't a question.
Go
but
ahead,
okay.
go ahead.
So again, the difference here is opportunities. I get that, believe me. And I definitely don't want to do any of those other things either. But taking on more debt and on something that's not going to bring back the return for a long time, when we already had done that, and I say we because none of us were here when that happened. None of us. But when those past commission took on that other debt that put us in this position in the first place, it makes no sense to go out and get a credit card to cover the other debts. That's what this would kind of be like. I understand that it would help us to get further, but it is going to benefit the one area. And when you're talking about housing and stuff like that, I want to see those houses. But at the same time, developers pay their own. I'm not even saying that we don't do things. I think that we should, but it has to be in some type of combination with a utility district or an agreement with the property owner. We haven't done it. Whatever the reasons are, we have a lot of things going on in the departments, we haven't done it. So now we're sitting here in a situation where take the loan or not take the loan. If that's what it is, without the benefits, without anything that we're gonna get back on it, then I don't see how we can take the loan. How do you take $8 million in debt and say, because we wanna have something there someday? We still have to pay for it now. We're talking $400,000 a year, extra.
Do we need to take the full $8 million?
No.
No, we do not. And actually, how this works is that you would accept the $8 million, but it's basically a line of credit. And you
Yeah, I
draw
thought we asked about
on,
that. I thought you
on
said.
it. You draw on it as you need
Yeah,
it.
well,
Exactly.
and we asked about that the last time. I thought we were told that that's not how we can do it, that we have to take the.
No, I think.
Or we can take four.
I think
or
the
we can take-
confusion is, we accept the
right.
we ask for the $8 million. And then if we don't even have to use the entire amount, but we have the $8 million to help us build the infrastructure, to help, not just Belfair, but Mason County, in my opinion. We're helping build that infrastructure where we can employ more people, grow the businesses. As you can tell, I support it 100%, but being on the Public Works Board has given me a lot of insight, I guess. They are so excited about seeing the direction that Mason County is going. And this is one of the projects that they've shown to all the legislators and to the governor. And everybody is so excited about this project because they do see how it's going to help Mason County and how. Yeah, so you don't have to take the entire amount. I'm going off on tangent, I know, but you don't have to take the entire amount. we've been approved for $8 million, but you don't have to use the entire amount.
No, but
Think
it's a
of
line
it-
of credit concept, because we talked also about 4 million and stuff, but the
Which
line of
is-
credit is,
Exactly, so think of it like your construction loan when you're building a home, essentially. You've got your construction loan, you do your business, so the bank says, hey, you can build a $300,000 home, turns out it's only $250,000. Then at the end of your project, they write the final mortgage agreement for the $250,000. Public Works Board loan is very similar. They'll say, commissioners, you've got $8 million to play with. We are saying, we are projecting that our project's really around 4.5. If we add a safety factor of 30%, because we're still in the preliminary phases here, then that's $6 million at the most. But if you remember, Gordon was looking at around the $4.5 million, and that really was, I believe, around 260,000 additional debt, not the 400,000.
yeah. No, the foreign was
And then
based
it
on
was-
the 8. Now, I was actually trying to be mellow, because I know it's more than that, what I'm saying. I'm just
Yes.
saying that,
Yes,
okay.
And I think the other point that I think is worth remembering here is Richard's point about how there are other elements of the facility itself that need improved regardless, and it would be next to impossible to do that without, whether we want to do the extension or not, these things are gonna need to happen in order to keep the plant functional
And actually,
and
knocks
get that,
$25,000
and get that
just
redundancy
for-
that we need.
So what does that look like if we end up a year from now or 2 years from now and we don't take any of the money?
well, what will happen is that, and we're gonna truck along actually on our grant for a period of time. We will not be drawing on this loan for about a year. We'll start taking, it'll be that long before we're starting to tap into the loan. And then at that point, we'll be starting construction. And commissioners will have a bid before them about here's what the bid is. And you will look at it and say, all right, well, we thought our construction bid was gonna be about 4.5 million, and Public Works, you're telling us it's 6. What can we do different? Or maybe the bid comes back in at 4. So, sorry, I'm just kind of
Well, actually, no,
describing sequencing
you're scaring the hell
about.
out of me, because I was there for the other one when that happened, and it did not go that way.
No.
It started at 24 million, became a $57 million plant.
I guess
That's what I'm saying, that's what I'm,
What I'm describing though, Commissioner, is that you do have additional checkpoints or go or no-go decisions. So even though if you say, yes, let's accept this loan, there are many other decision points in the coming years about, all right, here's really what the bid is. Do we now authorize construction in this amount, or does that look different? And
Or
you have-
conceivably, you could work on your ULIT idea.
Yes,
well,
exactly.
and that's where I'm, because I'm
Yes.
just being honest with you guys, this one is so big to me, this is where
Yeah.
the flag that I post, where I die on the hill, it's one of those, it's that bad
Yeah.
for me. I'm trying everything not to be that way, and I don't think I've ever done that since I've ever been here, to where I've said that, Tim and any of our battles or anything like that, but that's how much I feel about this one. But I want us to have our opportunities. I do want us to go there. The dangers of doing it this way and just doing it free for somebody to get up there is just too high, and the payment is too high. If we can be sure there's another decision point, that this isn't the time that I have to fight, I guess is what I'm saying, that we can still consider to work together, it's not doing it, then I'm
The way I view this, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, is this essentially reserves that money for us so that we don't lose it. So that when the legislature goes into special session later this year and they're looking for money to pull down in coronavirus
That's
response,
not there,
Right.
people.
and they wanna do other projects with it, that we don't lose our line in the queue, or spot in the queue.
Right.
Yep, that's exactly right.
And, I mean, if I don't wanna walk away from that.
So let me ask, what can we do? Is there anything you can help me with here? We may not be here. There's a pocket of $8 million that somebody else will drop it right on them. That's what I worry about also.
So if you're not here, the person that is sitting in your chair will have that responsibility because he still has to answer to his constituents.
It doesn't
His
matter.
or her constituents.
No, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's still my decision that made that happen. I don't care, I meant in general, if somebody can't stop it or whatever. You know, gosh, I don't think I've ever tried to bring people into the room and do anything like that. But this is one of those times where it is that kind of an issue. And, you know, I don't wanna set it up for somebody else to do that to them. That's, for me, that would be pretty chicken, you know.
And I didn't mean it like that.
Huh?
I didn't mean it like that, just so you know.
Actually, I didn't take it the way I'd even said it to you, no. No, sorry. I just meant for myself, I couldn't do that. If I did that, I wouldn't be able to live with myself, is what I'm saying. Not that you think that. What about the idea, you know, of what we had talked about before, of a smaller amount of that 8 million, and the risk that goes with that?
Well, wouldn't we be doing that anyway? I mean, it's,
I don't know, because we still have an 8 million they could draw on. That's what I'm talking about.
But those are, you have the breaks, you have the control on what the draw is, yes.
so, I wanna put words in your mouth. Assuming that you're not back in January of 21
Yeah.
is where you're concerned. I mean, I don't wanna put words in your mouth, but I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, well, and even in 4 years, if that's when it gets dropped on, but
Mhm.
that's exactly what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
If I decide, you know, there's a lot going on, but aside from that, if I'm not here, yeah.
Well, I think there would still be ways that we could build in those stopgaps throughout it. We would just have to, we can't figure that out until we have some willingness to, I mean, take the, give our letter to the Public Works Board. I'm sure that, I don't know, have you any thoughts on that?
Well, one of the things that we identified, and I don't know if this gets at your concern, Randy, but having financial controls and having quarterly reports to commissioners about how many ERUs we've added during this interim, what is our actual draw, what is our position, what's our repayment, basically a financial report and also a development report, so we can continually be tracking and saying, are we on track, were our assumptions right, are they not right?
You and I talked
What do
about
we
that
need to adjust
the
to
other
make
day.
sure we're on track?
And what all that is somebody telling you that this is where you should be, but when you're not there, they don't help you one little bit. Because you know this is where you should be, does not make those developments happen, it does not make the dollars come in.
I guess, you know, and I really understand where you're trying to get with this, but I don't understand how, when you get those report, I mean, it's a pretty big assumption to make that whoever takes, you know, over when you and I are gone would not have the wherewithal to see those, I mean, that's a pretty big assumption to make.
And they still have to report to the Public Works Board
Actually,
too.
I'm gonna tell you how it's not. When I first got elected, I sat in here and we had this big plan. And I tried to get information before I ran. That's one of the reasons why I ended up running. What was our debt? What was our income monthly? You know, what was our debt payment and such? And what was our maintenance operation? Tried everything to get it. The public tried to get it and they never did. When we first got elected, I had a different director at the time. I tried to get it and I couldn't. I finally, literally, was one of those times where I said, listen, you know, stand on the tables, you gotta get me this now. So he came to me and he finally said, okay, I got it. So we sat down that Wednesday and he started showing it out. And I said, that's not what I want. I'm asking you, maintenance and operation, debt repayment, how much do we get in? And at that point, this is the director and everything, and we're around, he literally went, it's this much for maintenance, this much for debt repayment, and this much when we come in, he sits back and goes, oh shit, I'm not kidding you. That was the reality. He didn't realize that nobody, because formulas are great, but that's not the true reality of what the impact is. Some things are a lot simpler. So yeah, no, it does happen. It happened right here.
That's staff, but I'm saying.
Well, the commissioners are, to be honest with you, nothing personal about us. I trust the knowledge of staff way above us.
Well,
So if our
well,
staff
you
has
need
that,
facts, you
the
need
commission didn't have it
accurate
either.
facts to help with your decisions, for
No,
sure.
Well, no, even with all of it. I know, I'm worried, we put that too much out there, it's like candy, you have money out there, just like now, we're talking about it, now, just because it's there. We don't actually have a project that we have to get it to right now. We could get a loan some other day at 2%. Right now, it's gonna be dropping like that for us to get our own loans, like that, if we had an opportunity, or our own
My concern is,
bond.
because I see how the money is dwindling to the Public Works account, Public Works Board. The legislature keeps stripping money away from Public Works and putting it in different areas. My fear is that if we do not accept this now, it'll be gone. And then how do we help Mason County? How do we help Belfair grow?
By going out for a bond, by going out for USDA loan, by going out, all that still doesn't go away. This was the legislative offer, and it's appreciated. The money was more appreciated. This is appreciated, but at the same time, just because we're offered something doesn't mean we should take it.
Can I ask you, and I'm gonna be blunt,
Please.
where were these thoughts over at least the past month, but as we have been going out for this, we had this offer back last summer.
I have said this over and over again.
This is the first time,
No,
Commissioner, that I'm hearing about USDA loans.
I have,
other-
remember, we've had the arguments about even trying to go with, at 4 million. I've had issues with all the other, all the aspects of it. As for the loans and the grants, that part, the thing you said was, we won't have this opportunity. So that's a different question that was ever asked in the past.
Well,
My answer today is, those opportunities are still there, it's just a different price mark.
Well, you won't have this opportunity.
No, but, well,
And so, but I mean, are you saying that you believe there will be better opportunities for
well,
financing?
I always believe that we can get more grant and stuff as the years go on, as we've done it in the past. We were able to do it 85%, where this one will not be on the project itself. And it still puts us in that huge debt. To not get any of this as grant, maybe in the future we could, but again, that's a roll of the dice, that's a risk. Every time we're taking a risk, where's our benefit? The benefit is eventually we may get to a point to where we get on a positive. We've been waiting for that now for 10 years in Belfair. And it may come tomorrow, but right now, we haven't even overcome the first one. The first one still has its $10 million backwards. And it's those people that are being blamed for it, so to speak, even though they had nothing to do with it. The same thing would be here. If it gets put on them again, it's the exact same thing happening, except for this time I'm sitting in the chair. That's the thing. I assure you, all the people that did it the first time thought they were doing a good thing. I had those arguments in my community. Tim did not think he was hurting my community. He truly believed he was saving them. And so did Linda, and so did Ross. But that's not what the reality was. The numbers didn't add up. It was still a risk. It was not a good financial purchase, so to speak. Will it be in 20 years or 30 years? Maybe. But right now, we're still dealing with it. And to get us out of that trouble, I want to go to Kitsap, but to get us out of that trouble, right now, we don't have anything Kitsap to hook up to either. This is just to spend the money to go up a hill and hope that somebody comes in. And if you realize, just to pay for 1 million, we need 50 ERUs. Currently, right now, we have about 411 in all of Belfair. All of it. And so we need 50 for 1 million.
Commissioners, if I could step back, your point about the ability to develop on septic at this time. So let's say that nothing, that I think your point was that development could still occur without this additional sewer investment.
Yeah, there's a cost.
So my concern about that is that even though you can have that happen, particularly on residential, you're taking up more space for your on-site and your septic and your reserve, and we're not developing at the density that maximizes our ERUs for the overall system. And you're not gonna be able to cost effectively come in and redevelop that area. And that to me is a potential threat for long-term economic viability as well. because you're not maximizing your density and you're not get your maximum number of ERUs
But there's a
that could
cost of that,
connect.
and the cost is $8 million. The cost is $400,000 a year out of the rest of the county, and their ability to use it for other infrastructure things for the whole county. There's that cost for that optimization, you know, can be also spread out, and should be, before we're even looking at taking money like this, over the people that have that property to develop. Whether it be a utility district, or whether it be an agreement with them for construction or something. But that's when that stuff should come in. Even if in 10 years, there's buildings up there, and then we bring it up there so they can maximize the rest of it. But to do it early, and to throw $8 million out as a seed out there, when we're this much in debt now, on the same project, in the same place, where, you know, we're talking about whether they can handle 108. And eventually, again, nothing about you guys, because you weren't here for any of that. I actually, when I first came in, there was talks about charging the full amount. So you may not be here, I may not be here, and somebody else may have a different perspective, and that's scary as heck. I don't want to put us in a position where they have that different perspective, or that different opportunity.
I'll say this, to that point, you've had the opportunity to work with now 4 different commissioners in your time here. And at no point, and I know Terry and Tim didn't raise it to the level that it should be at based on the financial analysis. I have not entertained that idea. I just said I'm uncomfortable with the 108. And I won't speak for Commissioner Trask, but I'm not sure that you have yet worked with a commissioner who has who's actually, but I don't know how we make it up there unless we get more pipe in the ground and we get more connections.
So the sewer was built in what year?
2012 was the
Completion,
date.
yeah.
And it was built because they knew that growth was going to come, right?
They were told at the time a difference between 7% and 14%.
And so I do believe that there's going to be growth there. And I do believe that we have to do something to help that growth. We have to put in the infrastructure. I mean, that's part of a county's responsibilities to help businesses grow and to build infrastructure. I just see this as the perfect opportunity to really help, to help Mason County, to help Belfair. And also Bremerton, that's in the part of Bremerton. They want to be a part of this too. So I think, I don't know, I think this is the perfect opportunity. It's the perfect time.
Well, with all due respect,
And
let
if
me
you
ask
don't do it now, when?
and I told you could do it at any time at a different cost.
Yeah, but it hasn't been done since,
That's because it doesn't pencil, and it shouldn't
well,
be
then if it
done.
doesn't pencil,
Then you don't do it. It's
then
the risk of the people.
then the Mason County is gonna be paying for it forever.
Actually, hopefully they get it paid off. That's been the whole idea that we've been doing. But by taking on more debt, it extends out how much and how long it takes to get paid off. Again, the same things that you said, with all due respect, are the same things they said before. And it hasn't changed. We're hoping, yes, but it's not there. There is no big one. We're finally getting one in 12 years, or not, it's more than that, in 10 years, but they started earlier than that, trying to bring stuff in. One big project. And again, it's putting it on those people, whether we like it or not, unless we want to take this money and put it under a debt completely on the side of it. I'm open to that.
What does that mean?
What that means, it's like, if we were to take a bond as the county or anything, but when you take it and you put it underneath that specific utility, that utility is responsible for the paying back of it. And that's where the pressure will come in the future. You know, we're lucky, we're getting away with a few things, we're kind of lucky. RCW says you have to pay for maintenance and debt out of the system. That's one of the things they've had issues with, but we were doing it through the 09 because it isn't allowed use, but it's not a preferred use. We're doing it out of reach. Okay, they're allowed, but it's not a preferred. That's the same thing we're talking about doing here. Google thinks I'm asking them to talk.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know what's funny is up until like 3-4 months ago, it never did it once. Now it's doing it all the time.
I think we also have to look at the fact that we've got now the freight corridor going in too, so that's opening up a lot more opportunity for people in that area also. So I think we have more benefits now than you did in the past.
Definitely lots of synergy.
Right. Right.
Well, that's, I mean, I think that's a good point. You know, this would be a small part of a nearly $100 million investment in your community. And, you know, there's the roundabout, there's Mason Transit, there's the freight corridor. This would be a component of that. We know we've lost out on some big opportunities because we haven't done everything to put ourselves in a position to capture those opportunities. And that's why Amazon is, in part, that's why Amazon is going to Bremerton and not Belfair. And, you know, I get it, they're no good, I mean, this is possibly the best of the worst, you know?
And I guess that's where we disagree. I don't think it's the best of the worst. Actually, paying our bill now is still beneficial. Continuing to pay down the debt and not putting us in more debt or putting more risk on the people of North Mason and the county is a better option. I want this, but I want to see that there's something that's gonna pay for it. You know, to take this chance with nothing on the hope, like they did in 2011 when they were telling us down there. It's just not true. You know, yes, it could happen, but boy, we're sure gambling a lot of money with a lot of people's future. And I know that that is our job, but it didn't work the first time, so let's do it again.
Do you think anything has changed to the positive since the last time a decision like this was made?
Yes, I do. Well, not for their decision.
Right. But do you see any situational differences?
To be able to move up there and stuff like that, as I had said in our past meetings, I would be supportive of working in combination with property owners and stuff like that. Taking the whole full burden and doing it all for them is not appropriate in my opinion. If we were to even do it as a utility district, I think that the growth could come. If we were able to pick up, we have an opportunity that maybe in the future still, because we haven't made those deals yet, to pick up from the Kitsap side as well. But all these things, we're doing all this and taking, without those agreements, without those options yet, there's still just a hope.
Well, I'll tell you this, I don't think you get an agreement with Kitsap unless you see it move any pipe north. I mean, I think that opportunity goes away real quick.
But that would be the idea is, if we come north, what is our agreement? That's how we would build it together.
And, you know, and part of the other thing was, you know, we've looked at it over and over and came up with a phased approach that allowed us to capture the benefit first while still maintaining the relationship with the port and city of Bremerton so that they could be in position to capture it down the line. I mean, I really think that as far as previous decisions go, look, I mean, I wasn't in the room and I can't get inside their heads, but we have gone around and around and looked at multiple, you know, iterations of this to the point where they found a way to take $1 million off of the project. And I just think it would be a major setback for us to push all that work aside and not try to capture this now. And I understand, again, if you're a no, I get that. I'm not sitting here to try and convince you to change your mind because you've been at this a long time. And I know that you've, you know, as you said earlier, this is kind of what spurs you on to run for commissioner in the first place. I can tell you when I ran in 16, I talked about this quite a bit, and this is the exact plan that I put forward when I ran in 16. So I've tried to be as consistent as I can in looking for those opportunities. So I'm not trying to change your mind. I will, even though if
I see this, we're working together trying to.
Yeah, and if you're a no, I might disagree with you, but I don't. I mean, God bless it. You know, you have a position to represent, and that's fine. But I'll say this, if we don't move forward with this, I can't support doing the planned action EIS. Because I can't see putting money into that without having the infrastructure to go with it.
But again, I want the infrastructure, but I think that there has to be a combination of the people that have the property and the taxpayers of Mason County, not just the taxpayers.
Can you walk me through why you think the property owners up there would not have to make any investment in order to get their parcel sewered? Is that what you're saying, that we would be bearing the entire burden and that they would have to make no investment on their own side to get it stemmed out
The
and
only
lateraled out?
investment they would make would be literally the hookup, the charge for hookup, and then of course the monthly. But again, first we're doing it, and we're increasing these values exponentially on our back doing it, and there's nothing there yet. Again, it just doesn't make sense. I was with you when you were running, and I completely agree, and I thought the same thing, and I said the same thing. But that doesn't mean that this is the answer, that the county paying all the money to do it is the answer. The answer, even back then, was working with the property owners and working with the city of Bremerton, and as a team, putting all these things together. Not just Mason County, dropping all the money, and taking on all the debt, and putting the Belfair system in an even greater risk than it is now. Because it's at risk at all times. It's not running. So to take on more debt to do it may be fine today for a few days, but it eventually has to be paid for. And to pay for that, as I said, we need 50 new ERUs for every single million that we do. And it's actually probably, 55, if you cover everything in. But either way, it's still, just using the 50, that's a lot compared to how many we've had. We've had approximately, actually when we first built, when they first built, it went backwards. They had all this idea it was gonna go forward, but it went backwards. The ERU rate, amount of people that had ERUs dropped by a lot.
I think a lot of them stayed with their septics, right?
No, they couldn't stay with their septic. We lost businesses, and people just abandoned buildings even, and so the buildings went away. Then that leveled out, and then we've been picking up a few here and there, but it's not very much, unless you get a Safeway or something. Starbucks, a nice big building, what is that, 3 ERUs?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
24.
yeah. That's what we're talking about, and if we're talking about coming up with, hundreds and hundreds.
We're talking 28 ERUs per year through 2034
Is
is
your
what is
projection.
needed.
How is that what was needed? That's not
It was
possible.
like 178
Yeah.
needed ERUs total to cover the debt cost of that project.
Oh, that's just cover for where we are now, for what we've already paid? Because I think you're looking at something different. Right now, when they came out here, they gave us our numbers. Your guy that's sitting there told us it was 50,000 per million.
The updated financial report shows ERUs needed to cover O&M and new debt service by 2034. 28 ERUs.
That's not possible.
And that
We've
was,
got a mistake there. That's $2,800, that's $3,000 a month.
we would need to add 770 ERUs total by the end of the
Okay.
planning period.
Well, that makes, see,
By the end of
that's,
the planning period.
okay, but that's the
So
number,
stretching it out,
not the
What's the end of the
28.
planning period?
2034.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if all we needed was 28, I'm down. But I can tell you, I know the simple math tells you that's not even, that wouldn't even get us close to even help us in Belfair for what we have if we didn't do anything. So just so we can go forward, I understand where you guys come from. I have to think about where I'm at on it and how to deal with it myself and all. Because right now, at this point, especially if we're still looking at taking on the whole thing, then I don't see any protections for my community at all.
Well, and I know I keep coming back to this, but it says right here, any unused funds will be de-obligated. So we're approved for $8 million, but we don't have to use that entire $8 million.
Can you just define, like, this is only what this money can be used for? And then once you've completed
Once
that, you say that it's
Once you do the
obligated.
loan, yeah, I mean, if we commit to the loan, it will
I'd say
be
it's already
just for
defined.
the sewer
Yeah.
project, yeah, completely
Yeah, it's
defined
defined.
already.
I mean, like I
But-
said, if it's 4.5 million, and so there's, just say it's 5 million, there's 3 million left over,
Right,
how do you
Then if
keep
that's-
that from
if-
being?
It's,
for
it's,
being used, because the Public Works Board they audit these things all the time.
right,
And so they're gonna keep you honest.
Right.
yeah, we have quarterly reporting,
Mhm.
that they're monitoring and tracking what all of our expenditures are. Here was the scope of work, here was the budget,
But that
here's
doesn't
what
help us
our-
keep us from spending 8 million, just because we report what it is. Just
Well, that's what I was
as long as
wondering,
it's-
is
Yeah, no, I
is there
think.
anything
yeah.
in there that?
And that's what I'd feel a lot more comfortable if there was, but right now, there isn't.
Well, it can only be used for the sewer. Are you saying that
construction
we
of
could
the
use
sewer
it for
could-
something
no.
else?
Well, if we
But
could.
you can't.
No, I was gonna say, if we could, that'd be nice. I asked
Yeah.
before for us to look at that, at doing off some debt
Exactly, and they said
payment, and
no.
they said no.
Right.
Because that would
It
have
is
been
just for
wonderful.
the building the infrastructure and to improve what needs to
So
be.
if, as an example, if we put everything together and we put our bid package out, and it comes back and it's, the 4.5 million or whatever, I mean, can we then truncate it at that point and shut the valve off and say for the contingency, we'll take 5? And then that 3 million is de-obligated at that, can we do it at that point?
No, I think it has to be at the completion of the project.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Right. But if you get the bid in for 4.5 million, and, I mean, that's what you're gonna be, that's what the loan amount will be, is for the 4.5 million.
Can we do an internal resolution that binds us to that outside of?
Can we do an internal resolution that would make this an internal loan on the county and not on the actual utility itself?
I don't think that the Public Works Board would approve that.
Well, if we still say it's going to that, the only difference is our entity that we're putting it on. Once it's put under the utility, it must be paid for by that specific one. Russellwood cannot pay for it, for bell fares. North Bay cannot pay for bell fares. If it is done as a county thing, then it can be done however we need to. And it does not put the burden directly on bell
Can you
fares.
check on that? Just call Connie and maybe.
I need to make sure I understand.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I can tell you don't understand.
No, because I think what I,
So the loan is taken specifically by Mason County itself, but not as the Belfair wastewater treatment system. It's taken strictly only for the purpose of still doing that. You can put money into a system, you just can't, once you take a loan, you take a debt on it, you have to be able to, that's still part of what you have to be able to charge eventually. I'll sit and work with you afterwards. I can tell you one thing, if that
I
was the
think that's
case.
the way it's written.
No, it goes, once it goes to the utility, we've been through that before. That's where the problem is. Once it becomes part of the utility itself, it is stuck in the utility.
So Commissioner, are you suggesting just general county debt?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you for this, just simplifying it out.
Right.
Which would make it a current expense obligation if the
Yes.
sewer,
Yes,
but financially, I'm not
which
sure
it,
how that.
which it already is a current debt. If the
Yeah,
system
right.
complete, no, but it doesn't matter. It's still, if you put it into the actual utility, it is those utility payers that are still on the hook. But if that thing ever defaulted, the county's still on the hook.
Right.
Is
But
that,
they put it on them because.
is that a decision that would impede sending our letter of intent to Public Works Board?
I believe so. I don't know that we would be able to sort this out and have a revision to the contract.
Well, it may
and
not have to be a
provide-
revision. The question is can we?
That would be to a treasurer, our debt, I mean, I know we're overall county-wise at a good place, but
Yes.
that's our debt policy treasurer.
Mhm.
Even
I
if
mean, is that-
it was your intent, If you guys told me that if it's allowed, and they say it's allowed, and it's gonna take us time to go through that to actually get it finalized, I'm still gonna be on board. If that was the issue, you know, because it has to go through the finance committee, it has to, all those other things.
Is it, I mean, is that not just six of one, half a dozen of the other? Since, I mean, how materially, what would that change for you? I mean, you're,
A lot, because when it's on the utility, when all hell breaks loose, when anything goes bad, it has to go back on the ratepayer. It has to. If we take the debt on ourselves, the only way, a county can't bankrupt, as you know. And so that's why that never would happen that way, but, you know, legitimately, we're still responsible for it as the co-signer will say. But the district, the utility district is the one that has to carry the burden if something comes down upon them. Unless we did it this other way. And it may be nothing to it, actually, if, depending on the verbiage, if they will allow us to do it, but we still have to spend it the same way. That doesn't change, you still have to spend. You know, I'm still not comfortable with, I still would rather have partnerships, I'd still rather have all those other things, but at least that would take the heavy burden or extra risk off of the community. And that system.
I think that the current loan agreement already takes that risk off of the community, but we'll double check with the
in what way?
Public Works Board. Because it already says that the county is on the hook.
The county's
One way or the
responsible for
other.
paying it off.
Yeah, but I think it might be how we put it in, that's what I'm saying. If we're allowed to put it in as general fund debt instead of the other debt, that's a whole different animal.
Right, so,
It
So-
doesn't specify.
no, it doesn't.
That's what
It
I'm
doesn't.
saying.
So I
It
think,
doesn't
I think
specify.
that
So
would be
it
up
may
to
be
us.
okay.
That would be
Right.
up to us, as to
Exactly.
how we determine where
Yeah.
the loan is, but as far as Public Works goes,
Right.
I
they
would-
just want a commitment from the county.
I would think that that's correct, but
Yes.
I still probably wanna just double check, just, because if it has to,
Yeah.
the checks have to be made
Because
to the utility.
with all the other loans that we worked on as the board, it's either the city, it's the port, it's the county, it's, you know,
Yeah.
whatever special district, it's their responsibility to pay it back regardless of how they pay it back.
Well, again, I would feel a lot more comfortable, and I still have my same concerns, I still would like to see us work partnerships, I still rather, because I still think that's the right thing to do, still. But at least this would take that.
Well, and I don't think this gets in the way of any of those conversations. I think we would need to make an investment, period, and we can't do it unless we move forward with a letter of intent to the Public Works Board. I mean, I don't
And
see
we
it
still
as
are
being
public
mutually
services.
exclusive.
Yeah.
You'd still have to identify how you're gonna pay it back, whether it's gonna be a combo of REIT 1.09 rate increase or leave the rates where they are. The county, because it's still the county's responsibility, because I know even revenue bonds, if it defaults on that, it's still our obligation.
And that may be where the verbiage is then. But again, I would feel, it's still not perfect by a long shot, but at least it's, the threat to the community is alleviated a lot.
Can we get Jen to weigh in on that maybe? Too?
Yeah, I think that this definitely is a general debt to the county, that's how I read it, but I'll double check
Please.
on
If we-
that. And, I mean, yeah, right now, we're already subsidizing with .09.
Yep.
um,
And as you know, they don't like it.
And probably
The state.
going to be at some point with general fund money if we continue on like we're doing. I mean, we're only bringing in $96 per ERU. We have 416 ERUs, that's 400 and some thousand per year. The annual O&M costs are 600 and something. So, I mean, it is a huge risk, but I mean, reading this plan, it sounds doable with in the past.
She's watching upstairs, this is funny.
Good job, Lisa.
We sent the treasurer's bat signal up.
So, looking at the contract, there's nothing that says it's a debt of the sewer. It is a county general debt. You would have to determine at some point in time how you want to pay that debt back. So if you take it on, it is a county current expense debt unless otherwise Noted. As are most of the loans for welfare. So it's not any different than that. If that's,
Very good,
if you
yeah.
have other questions, but that was the one you were asking, and I just wanted to make sure that the issue is that currently, unless you specify you're going to pay it back, the sewer revenues is a county debt.
Seems, I don't know, that helps,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
at least with clarity there, so.
I'm glad you were watching.
It's an important discussion.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry.
Yeah, it is.
So,
Whenever I see something from home, I gotta think Grandma's down again. She goes down. Sorry.
So, do you have any, I mean, does that clarify?
That does, and as long as we make sure that it's not designated as the utility, and the utility is responsible for the complete payback of that, then that helps me a lot.
it's a decision, obviously, the board can make
That's
at any
important.
time, but to sign this contract and get it started, you don't have to have that decision unless,
Well,
That's the other
I know.
thing.
that Commissioner Netherland is asking for that, but what I'm saying is, there's nothing in that contract that says it is at this
Yeah.
point in time.
and if you guys are saying that, what you didn't say yet, I don't wanna put words in your mouth, but if you would consider that as making sure that it's on the county obligation.
Well, I think it's already, the decision's already made for us. I think what the treasurer is saying is that it is general county debt.
But there is a trigger that puts it on there if you chose.
If you,
by putting-
if the board
It's a
votes to repay it, I mean, if you pass a
So
resolution that
that's what I'm
says
saying.
you're going to repay it
Well,
in
have we
some other
ever,
form,
but we haven't,
you
with
have
the
not
current-
done that in the past.
right.
No,
So-
no, with the current debt, they put it on the utility.
You're paying it out of that fund, but
It transfers in.
you're transferring money in to cover it.
Okay, well, I know some, I know that we talked with USDA, and that was on the sewer system.
Was that might be a
Generally,
federal-
when you
And-
go, this is a loan, this is not a bond, so generally when you go out for a bond with USDA or out to the public for one, they wanna know how you're going to repay it. And we have them in a couple different ways. And even, you can say it's paid by sewer revenue, but if the sewer revenue doesn't cover it, then you're gonna back it up with your general obligation debt. They're all general obligation bonds. So, it really doesn't, I mean, the intent was for those to pay them back with the sewer debt. That's what the intent was at the time, but that's not what's currently happening in full.
I would be willing to take the same approach to this as we have been with what's currently in place. I don't see any need to change and burden, I mean, it's,
Just keep it as a county, is that what you
yeah, I mean, I think that's the way it's being explained to me. We're doing it as transfers in. Currently, I wouldn't see any need to change our practice. If you recall, what Commissioner Drexler had wanted to do, a couple of years ago was in some way memorialize that in an effort to kind of address some of the state audit issues that have come forward. So I mean, this has been something that's been on the table for quite a while. So I have no problem with keeping that part of it in place.
Are you comfortable with keeping it as a county and not a utility?
Absolutely. If you don't specify a fund that you're gonna cover it from .09 or from REIT 2, it's a current expense obligation and you're gonna have to budget for it. So just in the process, you're gonna have to continue to make sure that wherever that funding is coming from, whether it's just the county current expense fund or you're doing some sort of this fund, this fund, this fund, that is budgeted accordingly to make those payments. And I think what I was seeing kind of from the cover letter and some of the other things is that they wanted that memorialized in some way. So, but it doesn't have to be, I think you just need to do it outside of approving whether you're going to accept the money or not.
Correct.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, and I think that's more or less in keeping with current practice, so I'm fine with that.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You don't wanna hang out? You don't wanna hang out?
I've been hanging out upstairs listening, I'll run back down if you need me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Better?
A lot.
Yeah.
Still have issues with that stuff and the dangers of even that kind of investment with that, but I don't think I'm going to be, you know, it's still gonna, this is all new living thing, but I don't think I'm gonna be fighting it. I think I'm gonna be, and you know me, if I'm not fighting it, I'll probably stand with you as I always do. That's how I do things, so. I just hate to say that right this second, but I'm right now, the pressure seems a lot different. It's a lot better on my community, the safety that brings. And those businesses that are giving us all that money for taxes.
So then the other part of it that I think I would like to see stricken from it is the rate increase at this point. I think let's just focus on moving forward with the Public Works Board as it is, and then continue to evaluate kind of where we are. I know there's probably gonna have to be some conversation around that down the line, but I don't think now is the right time to entertain a rate increase.
I agree with that, not
Yeah.
because I'm disagreeing with it, it's the time.
Right,
It's time.
right.
Exactly.
Because I will say, I can understand the conversation of a rate increase, a realistic one, I'm not sure this is it, but,
So in terms of the board action item, that part is stricken, so action 2, 1 is fine, remove 2 from the actions.
And that way we can
Which
do this
is-
in stages.
Yes,
Yeah, because I mean, I think we would need to have just more conversation about it.
yes,
and we can still continue to work on some of those things, like UID or whatever, to help
Most
protect the rest of the
definitely.
county, because, you know, they're not gonna be happy either, so we need to find a way to keep that burden off of the rest of the county if we can. If those property owners and that development can pay a part of it, it'd be helpful.
Cool.
all right. Thank you, commissioners.
So can you chart out kind of the immediate next steps
Yes.
for us on
Yes.
this?
Yep,
Right now or
So we'll-
or later?
Immediately.
Yeah, that's what I thought I was saying.
I'm gonna have- Well, you know,
right.
for our viewers at home.
Yes, for our viewers at home. So next steps, commissioners, well, the first question is, would you like this to remain on the action agenda tomorrow?
Just the number 1, just.
Number 1 on the action agenda
Right.
tomorrow, okay. All right, so that will be the case, and we will bring that forward for execution. And we will come back at a later date to talk about refining the other action items that are recommended for financial controls. We will also follow up on identifying other ways to recapture partnership.
I'm sure the whole county will be happy about that if we find that right.
Yes, and then the other thing that I want to do is work, Richard and Jennifer and our finance group, take a look at what the debt repayment schedule actually looks like, because Gordon in the FCS group memo laid that out quite nicely. How many ERUs really are we needing to add to cover this additional debt? What does the debt repayment schedule look like? So that commissioners have good facts in front of them about that process. And to answer your question, Commissioner Netherland, about do we have it to make that additional debt repayment? Where's that coming from?
Well, I know we don't have it, it has to come from somewhere.
Right.
Or backwards in the,
Right. And what else? What else am I missing, Richard?
My head's spinning. I don't know.
Jennifer, what am I missing?
The only thing I can think of is that we probably will not need a bridge loan, but we need to map that out.
Cash
as well.
flow, yes.
Yeah, the cash flow, and we can use the .09 and the REIT funds, assuming that we have them available. You know, with COVID, we don't know what's gonna happen with that. So yeah, assuming that we have those funds available, we can, you know, use that money up front to pay out the, what's going to be reimbursed by the Public Works Board on this loan. So, and that'll get us kind of started so that we have something to work with instead of getting a bridge loan. So,
Okay.
that's one thing I wanted to-
I did, but I can't. This one took everything I had left in it, so I'll call you. It says some citizen stuff and I don't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've had a lot of citizen stuff lately. Because even though we're talking about COVID, they're talking about everything else. And I'm not complaining, folks. I'm just telling you, that's the way it works.
How about with Lake Limerick and the Navy? Any updates?
Yes, so we've been definitely having conversations
Okay,
all the way around and planning, I think in the near future, to have a meeting with all parties.
Okay,
Yes.
right on.
Can you, one thing I do remember is they've had people talking about the lines going up out of Belfair. It's not our issue, but could you reach out to the state about when they're gonna reline that highway and Highway 3 out of Belfair to Burlington?
Striking, so.
Oh, okay, yes, I was gonna say, that's what we're kind of wrong. Yes,
I was thinking power lines.
right.
No, I just was, I know what you mean.
Uh-huh.
So,
Did
one
the
other.
boat go away, speaking
The
of?
what? Oh, I don't know, I haven't been through there yet.
The boat's
On
still
101.
there?
It was here last
Okay.
week.
Alrighty.
So with our, back to the solid waste side, flow control, I've heard maybe there have been some requests to push that back or some communications that are happening.
We've had some recent communications, yeah. They're kind of, Lakes County Coverage is kind of scrambling to get all the resources they need. Although we've been kind of reminding them
Yeah,
that, we have been reminding them on a regular basis that this is coming, that I haven't heard anything back from Kitsap County. I resent that stuff, but,
Get on me later, I'll call.
okay.
Just remind me, give me a call later.
Okay, I will. So, yeah, they're scrambling a little bit, and I mean, I understand, as it is, I'll show you
Do
something.
you feel it's a true issue or burden that they need at that time?
What's that, please?
Do you feel that their request for a little extra time, do you think that's true, legitimate, and that we should be?
It sure could be. This is, I'll give you this is real, I'll give you all one. Is basically,
Here you go.
It's your Rorschach for the morning.
Yeah.
What do you see in that?
I know, it's like, I threw it together
is this
very last
is this the
minute.
Dow? Is this the Dow over the past, couple of weeks since it's the stock market?
No, that is the,
There's little tiny words on the very, very top.
I know.
Daily average week.
There you go. Still don't know what it is, right? That is,
That almost helped.
how many containers go out every day on average, every week at the solid waste department? That's how many ship out, and you can see right until that red line marks when the World Health Organization issued the international COVID virus alert. And you can see what happened to our flow of solid waste as it comes in.
Wow.
Why that drop? I mean, like.
Yeah, that's.
Why would people want to hold on to their waste?
You know, I don't, there may have been a spike when they rushed to get rid of it, and then they don't have any.
Construction and all those other
Construction.
projects probably stuff. And now, this isn't home, this is all commercial waste, right?
That is all waste.
That's all waste?
That's all
We
waste.
had enough commercial going on to account for that,
Wow.
or not going on.
Yeah, you can see it, like the next day it dropped.
So, does
And that's
this,
back up.
does this,
So it's not here right now.
No, this is just, there's no value for that day yet.
Right.
This is basically the very first quarter of the year, so halfway through, we're nice and steady.
That's
And then it gets a
Aw,
little erratic and it's on its way.
right.
All right, so that's what scared me, was a significant drop.
The world has.
Just so you know, we're looking at it,
I thought
as
this
you're
was-
showing us a graph, and this is what happened.
I thought you
Oh,
were
yeah,
saying-
no,
I thought you were
that's
saying
what's
this is where we
yet
are
to
now.
happen.
Okay, then yeah, that
Yeah,
could easily be
it's
commercial.
dead.
I was gonna say, 'cause this doesn't really do a good job of firming that position.
No, that's dead.
They should have plenty of capacity.
Well, and we'll find, so it's real hard, ever since that,
Next time you bring us a graph, have somebody else make it for you. Because that one was scary.
This was obviously hot off the press.
Yeah, or stop at that point at least. That's fine.
That makes more sense though.
Yeah.
now you know. I know, if I'd have been able to get dates in there.
Well, you know what's funny is, I'm also looking at it from another perspective. You can tell, you know, in talking to some of our friends, growth in communities and when communities are contracting, you can tell by the amount of their solid waste. So
Oh, yeah.
when I'm looking at that, that first thing that came to my mind is, oh, no, what happened? So,
Where they put-
Good, though, that's what's
Yeah.
supposed to, like, what happened, something happened there.
yeah, but not with a line that goes to zero, man.
It's not,
Thank
this
you,
is not
Doug.
an EKG.
It almost felt like it.
Where is,
It did feel like it.
you know, I think that they'll be able to meet the needs. They kind of started adding it up, you know, that they know that we sent that stuff to Kitsap County. They haven't talked to them either, but they know so I think they assume that they're gonna be turned away at Kitsap County.
And so that's supposed to take effect April 1?
April 1, yeah.
And have they asked for,
They haven't asked for any relief from that date
Okay.
at
No
all.
extension.
well, then
That's not our issue.
Yeah, yeah, okay. That's what I guess I was getting at, is have they asked for an extension?
And I thought that's why you were bringing it up, because they were asking for them.
No, I just say it's hard to
You're
tell
just warning us.
what's happening with, our normal flows are not normal. But I did we have this on there?
No.
Okay.
You know, it's interesting, because I know this looks really, really bad,
So that-
but I used to do my own math on it, because I could never get, and we were a lot worse.
That's easier.
So
Yeah.
they're catching up to us.
Yeah.
You know, 8 years ago, no, 8 years ago, now, some of them, we are still almost 3-1, but 8 years ago, we were 3-1 on everybody.
And Bremerton's got another
Yeah.
rate increase coming, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not, I didn't have.
It
the
doesn't
rate
take that
increase.
into
No, it's close enough, at least you gave us an actual, real,
Yeah.
Right.
apples to apples, it's, you know, I appreciate that a lot. At least now I have some new updated numbers I can look at.
Yeah.
Jeff Gary will be happy.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'll be happy, but it'd be something that I'm sure he'd appreciate seeing.
Oh, and I guess I should let you know,
Well, speaking of that, I'm sorry to do this. Jeff Carey has come and spoke to us, and I think we brought it up before, but I know you're getting into place your financial people more.
Yep.
But he would really like it, I guess so would I, because now that he brought it up, I'm looking at it again more, and I'd like to break it out a little bit further on the financials, into the.
Absolutely. I spoke with Jeff at length about that, I think we all have the same goals
Yeah.
in that regard, and I
Mhm.
know that Richard and before Mary Lee left, they were digging into exactly that as
Yeah.
well,
Good.
so. Yeah.
so we did have a water main break in Beards Cove Friday night.
Yeah.
I was like, you did hear a lot about it. I hear a lot about that.
I heard about that.
But the issue, the fact that happens is no big deal. The issue is contact and being able to contact somebody.
Right.
Did we find out if that's all accurate, that, because what was being said, just to share with you, is they were contacting and calling, and so were other people trying to help them, and we're being told that we don't service that area. And we're being told they don't go past the Union Railroad Bridge, but it is our system, it is, and I hope that's not accurate, but supposedly it happened over and over and over again. The fire department came in and helped to turn it off, and then crews came in right around the same time, about 8 o'clock. So it's a communication issue. Now, you thought maybe MACECOM.
Well, I do know we have some things to straighten out with MACECOM as far as what the communication.
Right.
is, and Richard and Zach put together an updated communication
And they
list
have
for
that now.
distribution to everyone. What we found is that some people may have the updated contact information, but it doesn't get to every operator. So.
Do you
that's-
do a reminder to Mike Evans?
I worked with Ross, who gave me his contacts.
Okay.
Yeah,
To
but he
get-
actually, if you can, if you got a direct one, I'd appreciate it.
I'm on, yeah, I mean, I'm on that
He's
board,
worth
so
it.
it's
Yeah.
no big deal. If you want me to,
Yeah, and
Help
so
on
it's
that
director
side.
to, or commissioner to director sometimes makes a difference in going
Oh,
through
yeah.
the other ranks and.
Well, and I also got Rico in our GIS unit. He's making me a new map that they can highlight and go, okay, these are our utilities. This
See,
is the,
Usually I would have got involved even earlier, but there's an issue up there on that hill where I don't know, there's a whole other development that's not truly part of it, and they may not be on that water system.
Right.
And so, for all I know, this person could be in that little tiny community,
Right.
and for me to jump in and try to, it wouldn't have been proper at all, so I was trying to let it play its way out, and then, I talked to her, and so I don't know if that person was on that or not, but I do know that it does go past the Union River Bridge, and whatever they're calling, we should be trying to help figure that out and fix that.
yes.
And somehow we need to still work on that. We've got a lot better. It used to be that we didn't even have our phone number on the bills, remember? People were always trying to find who to call. And now at least we have it, and I know that because everybody kept saying, call the number on the bill. Is it this number? Yes, call that. Well, I did. That's what telling me.
Then we have the opposite, the homeowner association posts the
Yeah.
number for for Bob.
Yeah, for my
And
water.
so they call him for
Yeah,
anything.
for the homeowners association.
Oh,
Right.
nice.
So, yeah, like, hey, I wanna reserve a picnic table. He's like, what?
They are awesome people there, though, in that community, I'm telling you.
So we have a little of everything. Yeah, so that, and then also Richard and team have been busy planning for COVID
Mhm.
scenarios as well.
Worst case scenario.
That was one, okay.
And that's the other piece, it got us thinking as well, so it's one thing to think about our own utilities that we own and operate, but there are numerous private utilities, as you're aware of, that
Yeah.
are serving our community as well.
I got a message from, I think, the wife of an employee, who was very concerned that they're bunching up together in cars. They need in a room where they're all sitting together to start in the morning, and they're asking that we please, actually, they're asking that we send them all home, but I know we can't do that. They are essential,
Right.
and our whole community, they may not realize that they depend on them, because you don't think about them unless there's something blocking the road that
Right.
comes up. But it's not blocking, or it's not coming up, because they've already fixed it. But with that being said, can we look at,
Already,
okay, thank
Yes.
you.
that, and then, again, addressing some things at our transfer stations also. So we'll be coming back with commissioners about what
Yeah, that's
looks
gonna be
like
a
an
hard one.
agreeable game plan to you as well.
But it is exceptionally highly important.
Absolutely.
One of the big fears that happened right away is there was rumors
Absolutely.
that Mason County Garbage wasn't, and those rumors went crazy. Businesses were going, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? If they're closing, this landfill closed, can we, because you can't have a restaurant. But it was all handled, they weren't closing, our folks were staying, everything is good. It's just one of those things about the 19 people passing away in Belfair, that never happened, folks. COVID. It's just, that's amazing.
Yeah, the rumors.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's rumors, and there's rumors of rumors.
Just the facts, please.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else,
Okay.
commissioners?
We're good.
No, I think that's.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much for a shorter one.
I know, right?
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, do we have any commissioner discussion? I don't know. I don't have anything.
Nothing I need,
I'm good, yeah. I move we adjourn.
second.
We're adjourned.